Ready? Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Good morning to everyone. The hearing of the Committee on Public Information and Mass Media regarding fake news is now called to order. This is a resumption of our hearing. This is the third and hopefully last hearing that we will have on this subject. I will be very candid with you. Naghalo-halo ng emosyon dito sa ating hearing na to, na lumalim pa minsan ng alitan mula sa iba't ibang kampo. Pero sa tingin ko naman marami tayong natutunan, maraming mga hugot na lumabas dito, pero dapat natin balikan, bakit ba tayo nagkakaroon ng hearing na ganito? Ito'y para magkaroon tayo ng impormasyon na masasandalan natin, na mapapaniwalaan natin na totoo. Alam mo, sa ating konstitusyon, the importance of communication, in our Constitution, the importance of communication is recognized as a tool for nation building. Therefore, it is important for our countrymen to be able to determine through the proper channels and through truthful reporting what is really going on around them so that they can make informed decisions. Now, we will discuss the responsibility and accountability of bloggers and journalists alike, the effect of online platforms like Facebook, Google in shaping public opinion, the accountability of government officials such as myself for the use of resources in spreading information. Napag-usapan at napagbigyan ang ilang bloggers makapagsalita sa huling hearing. Unfortunately, we were unable to tackle the issue regarding the role of online platforms last time because some of our invited resource persons were at that time unavailable. Ano po ba yung fake news? First, we must make a distinction between facts and opinions. Yung sabi ng mga blogger, ang sari-sari nilang kuro-kuro ay hindi pwedeng itawag na fake news. Ito'y opinion. Pangalawa, napag-alam natin nung huling hearing na may dalawang uri ng fake news, disinformation at misinformation. Ang ibig sabihin ng misinformation ay balita na salungat, pero ang pinagmulan nito ay hindi naman sinasadya. This is not intentional. When we say misinformation, we may have made a mistake with our facts, and then we take it upon ourselves, if we are responsible enough, to correct ourselves. Meron namang misinformation that arises from ignorance that is unintentionally false. Ang disinformation naman ay maling balita na sadyang kinakalat para malinlang ang publiko. It is false information that is designed to mislead and purposely spread to convince others of an untruth. Paano ba napapalaganap ang misinformation at disinformation in today's digital age? Social media is the necessary distribution mechanism for these campaigns. Ayon sa pag-aaral at report noong 2017 ng Global Overview, kaya napaka-importante nito ang Pilipinas, pang-pito sa buong mundo sa pagdami ng bagong social media users. kumpara sa bilang ng social media users nito noong 2016. 12 million ang bagong social media users sa Pilipinas noong 2017. Yan lang yung mga bago, hindi yung mga datihan na. Pang-anim ang Pilipinas sa buong mundo sa dami ng Facebook users. And I will ask you to verify these facts to our guests. Mayroong tumataginting na 60 milyong Facebook users sa Pilipinas noong 2017. Nangunguna or top-notcher ang Pilipinas sa buong mundo sa time spent on social media. Siguro dahil wala tayong mapuntahan, kulang yung mga parks natin, siksikan yung mga lugar, wala tayong pera, yung pinakamura, social media. At naglalaan tayo ng 4 oras at 17 minuto kada araw sa paggamit ng social media tulad ng Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram at kung ano-ano pa. Marami sa atin ang kumukuha ng balita mula rito. There are many studies on how information and communication technology has been used for disinformation. One observation that came out of the discussions was the proliferation of fake news. This was brought about by the collective efforts of experts in creating an architecture of disinformation, possibly designed for certain principles. Understanding this architecture of disinformation, its structure, could help us curtail it, if not totally eliminate or stop it. Our revised Penal Code of the Philippines, Article 154, prohibits, penalizes, and fines unlawful use of means of publication and unlawful utterances, including publishing or causing publication any news or false news. So dati pa ito, criminalized na po ito sa ating bansa. Hindi po ito bago. Siguro ang ating hamon ay kung paano natin talaga masusuri kung ito ba ay intentional, kung gaano ba ito kasama ang naidudulot sa ating mga mamamayan. Facebook says that they are not in the business of publishing news, and they never claim to be a media outlet. Further, they are a private entity. No one is compelled to join Facebook. On the other hand, it has also been argued that Facebook is a non-traditional media company. The fact of the matter is, it has become one of the main sources of information for more Filipinos. It is so accessible because the app comes free with most cell phones. Perhaps it may be considered as a service imbued with public interest. Public interest is affected when social media is used to spread information among the citizenry. Public interest is also affected when social media is used as a weapon to silence dissent on either side. Pero paano natin mapipigilan ang paglaganap ng fake news upang hindi sumama ang ating marketplace of ideas? Nasa interes ng publiko na malaman kung ano ang katotohanan o kasinungalingan. Ang tanong, ang katotohanan ba ay nasusukat sa dami ng likes, hearts, o shares? O hindi ba dapat itaas natin ang diskurso ng pagbibigay ng impormasyon sa ating mga kababayan dahil sa pagdating rin ng panahon, lahat naman tayo magbebenepisyohan nito. An enlightened and informed citizenry. So before I start with questions to our resource speakers, I would like to acknowledge, I would like to acknowledge since I don't have anyone else here, this is just a continuation of our hearing. Perhaps it's better if I ask our resource persons to introduce themselves, beginning with Secretary Martin Andanar, and then Secretary Harry Roque, members of the government panel, and then the rest. Secretary Andanar.
Good morning po, Madam Chair. My name is Secretary Martin Andanar, and I represent the Presidential Communications Operations Office. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Senator. I am Harry Roque, the presidential spokesperson. However, I would like to emphasize that my appearance here is in my personal capacity because as spokesperson, I cannot speak outside of what the president would want to announce to the public. So to remedy that, I'm here in my personal capacity, and hence I'm just Harry Roque, not the presidential spokesperson.
Mr. Roque, I think it will be very difficult to differentiate, especially when there are official questions that I think you can answer based on institutional memory or even what you've heard from the president. So maybe just make a distinction as you answer because you are now wearing two hats, sir. Okay,
Thank you, madam. I will do that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ma'am.
Good morning, Madam Senator. I'm Attorney Marie Rafael Banag of the Presidential Communications ASEC for Operations and Legislative Affairs.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am Chris Roman of the Office of the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Assistant Secretary Darren Salipsip of the Office of the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Attorney Jun Guzman from the Office of the Chief Presidential Legal Counsel.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am Carlos Caliwara, Assistant Secretary for Legal Affairs and Consumer Protection and Legislative Officer of the ICT, Department of Information and Communication Technology.
Sir, panalo kayo pinakamahabang title ngayon dito.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Harold Clavite. I am the Director General of the Philippine Information Agency.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Attorney Christopher Hernandez from the NBI Cybercrime Division.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Victor Lorenzo, ma'am. I'm with the Digital Forensic of the NBI.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am Attorney Roy Ibay from Smart Communications and PLDT.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Sharon Ruth Soriano. I'm an Associate Professor at De La Salle University.
Morning, Madam Chair. I'm Attorney Rudolfo Larbal of the KBP.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am Simon Milner. I'm Vice President for Public Policy at Facebook for this region.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Ms. Claire Davey and I'm the Director of Community Engagement for Facebook in Asia Pacific.
Morning, Madam Chair. I'm Inday Espina Verona. I'm a journalist, a blogger. I represent the Arts and Media Alliance, LODI.
Morning, Madam Chair. I'm Lee Shun. Nice to see you again. I'm representing the public policy team from Google Asia Pacific.
Good morning. I'm Tres Reyes. I'm a Senior Editorial Director of CNN Philippines.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm Pia Ontiveros Pagkalinawan, Chief Correspondent, CNN Philippines.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Chian Mario Gonzalez, Head of ABS-CBN News Standards and Practices.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I am Dino Apolonio, General Manager of People's Television Network.
Magandang umaga po. Rowena Paraan, ABS-CBN. I also handle Bayan Mo Ipatrol Mo, which includes, among its advocacies, media and information literacy.
Good morning, Madam Chair. I'm Armand Naukum of the Dean and King's Public Relations. We specialize in tri-media and online media news services.
Thank you once again. Welcome to our public hearing. And thank you once again for your presence. Some of you here have been repeat resource persons, and I thank you for your patience. I thank you also for members of the government panel for being here in spite of your busy schedules. And of course, to our foreign guests, welcome to the Philippines. I hope this will be a good initiation for you for being here, or maybe you've been here several times, but we'd also like to convey the seriousness of this matter, and we appreciate your inputs and your presence here today. Okay, let me begin. Perhaps we can give this time now if there's anybody here from Facebook or Google who would have a presentation to make, because I think this is what we've been wanting to hear from the onset of our hearings.
Madam Chair, with your indulgence, and the problem is I have an 11 o'clock press briefing in Malacanang, so may I be given at least 3 minutes to make my preliminary statement because unfortunately the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday's press briefing is about the only regular official function that I discharge in the palace. So if I may be allowed to just say for about 3 minutes and possibly some queries.
Of course, sir, but I think that you can also conduct your press conference here. We already have satellites that can send out that information, and I'm sure whatever you'll say here is also as interesting as whatever you might have to discuss in your press briefing. But please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. You know, as I said, I'm here in my personal capacity. Although I think, as a matter of record, the President has not initiated any legal action as far as freedom of expression is concerned. He's a very big supporter of press freedom. In the 30 years that he has served government, he has not filed a single libel case, and he welcomes criticism as part of really the realm of politics. However, I do have my personal positions on the bill that we are discussing today. I do so as an advocate of freedom of expression. I have brought the matter of criminal libel in the Philippines to the UN Human Rights Council, and we have gotten a view that criminal libel in the Philippines is contrary to freedom of expression. We have also brought a case before the Philippines challenging the cyber libel law, and we had a partial victory, you know, where the takedown provision of the cyber libel was declared as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. Now, my view on fake news, let me begin by stating what already appears in jurisprudence. No? To begin with, the Constitution says there should be no law abridging freedom of expression. Any law which will criminalize fake news will obviously be in violation of this prescription because it is a law that would abridge freedom of expression. Now, the basis, of course, for the constitutional provision is because we have a firm commitment not only to freedom of expression but also to the free marketplace of ideas. And here, perhaps, it is apropos to state that in the leading case of New York Times versus Sullivan, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that fake news is not necessarily antithetical to freedom of expression. And let me quote, "Even a false statement may be deemed to make a valuable contribution to public debate since it brings about the clearer perception and livelier impression of the truth produced by its collision with error." Here, the emphasis is we must protect the free marketplace of ideas because ultimately the true test for truth is the power of an idea to be accepted in the free marketplace of ideas. The assumption being people can discern the truth from what is false, and there's in fact jurisprudence which states that sometimes the truth cannot be known without being told falsities, no? Because it is only in the face of falsities that we can tell what the truth is. But beyond this theoretical framework and beyond the general prescription, I would say that any criminal law penalizing fake news would also suffer the infirmity of what is being called void for vagueness. Now, here we come to the issue of if we're going to penalize fake news, who will judge what is fake news and what is news? Because the current framework now, it's the public that should be allowed to decide what is true from what is false. But if you make it criminal, then certainly a judge would have to sit in judgment and decide what is true and what is false, arrogating therefore unto itself and into the institution a matter that is better left to the public to judge for themselves. So first, my objection as an advocate of freedom of expression is that it is literally void on its face for being content-based restriction. Now, if it is not void in its face, then at least according to jurisprudence, it enjoys the overwhelming presumption of unconstitutionality, and it is for the state to prove a clear and present danger, to sustain the validity of the state interest in prohibiting freedom of expression. Now, unlike in Europe, where mere utterance, for instance, incitement to genocide is actionable, we do not adopt this view because we've adopted the American view that maintaining the free marketplace of idea should prevail even as against property rights because, as I said, it's the cornerstone of our democratic system. So first, in my view, it enjoys the presumption of unconstitutionality. Second, It might be void for vagueness because we don't know what is meant by truth from what is false, and this is a very real issue. In the realm of international politics, for instance, the definition of who is a terrorist is oftentimes unanswered. In the Middle East, if you ask the Israelis, they will have their own definition of who a terrorist is. If you ask an Arab, they will have a definition of who a terrorist is. Even today, as the DOJ has filed a petition to declare the NPA as a terrorist, the question is asked, who is a terrorist for purposes of being declared a terrorist group? So this is the problem with criminalizing freedom of expression. It could be declared as being void because we don't know what the definition of truth is and who will ultimately sit in judgment of what the truth is. My third point is I am not alone in advocating this view. In fact, we already have recognized views given by the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Expression, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Organization for American People's Rights, and they have all declared, and I quote, that general prohibitions on the dissemination of information based on vague and ambiguous ideas, including false news or non-objective information, are imprecise and incompatible with both national and international standards for valid containment of freedom of expression. Madam Chair, I have been a victim of fake news. It comes with the territory, and we can only hope that because people were given by God the ability to discern what is true and what is false, it is ultimately the public and the free marketplace of idea that should judge what the truth is and that should put ultimately the penalty on purveyors of fake news. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you for your statement, Secretary Roque. In fact, I think we've been together many times in the past, advocating for the freedom to express ourselves. We've been together in many advocacies promoting freedom of expression. And I continue to believe in that, and I believe this is exactly why we are here today, is so that when we express our ideas, it's also based on fact. Now, we are not here to create a new law exactly because there's already a revised penal code 154 criminalizing, in fact, misinformation or fake news, and it's very specific. That's why we're here to discuss that. If you would like to discuss further, for example, something that pertains to this bill, the Civil Service and Government Reorganization Committee is the one that will handle that, not public information. On the other hand, I'm sure you believe to yourself that although there's a free market of ideas, we have to endeavor to always be responsible in ferreting out the truth. Do you agree, sir?
Yes, I do, Madam. In fact, that's the second part of my statement. And if you allow me, the proposed law singles out government employees for spreading fake news. That to me is additionally possibly infringing on equal protection because we are in effect singling out government employees. What is the importance of regulating fake news? It's because we want to uphold the truth. If the objective is to uphold the truth, it does not matter if it is a legitimate journalist or a blogger that spreads false news. And that is why my position is that there is no basis for singling out that only government employees should have liability when they spread false news. On the contrary, the cause, as I say, is a natural commitment, a natural advocacy for the truth. If we are to enact a law, which I advise against, prohibiting and penalizing fake news, it should apply to all, not just to government employees.
Thank you for your opinion, but I think I would like to correct you on this matter. First of all, it applies to all. With the revised penal code, it already applies to all. But I think that you agree, government employees such as us, government officials and employees are held to a higher standard. There are certain things that we are liable for. For example, we need to be able to present our SALN. An ordinary citizen is not. We can be charged with graft and corruption, with plunder. An ordinary citizen is not unless they connive with us. So there are certain things that are expected of us because we have waived that certain right because we are serving the people and we have to be able to be transparent, to be held at a higher standard. In fact, even in our Constitution, it was mentioned to me by one of your bloggers, as early as 1918, it says that government officials cannot be onion skinned. We have to be able to subject ourselves to criticisms. On the other hand, I know what you're worried about. I am there too with you. I am not here to overregulate. That's why we have this, so that we can, even when I was chairman of an agency, I believed in self-regulation. But we need to be able to see also the extent of our responsibility to be able to express ourselves freely. When it already infringes on the rights of others to be able to live a normal life, to be able to defend themselves, I think that we need to be able to stop. You know, a lot of teenagers now, for example, when they go home, the bullying doesn't stop. And I'm not saying that, and the case is because social media is so pervasive. So we're just trying to put safeguards. Sir, we are not trying to take away anyone's rights here. As I've already mentioned, revised penal code is already there unless you will have your drive to repeal it. But again, Senate Bill 1680, please, I encourage you to attend the Civil Service and Government Reorganization hearing, and you're free to express your dissent on this particular bill. And I thank you, sir. So we will now...
May I be allowed one last
yeah,
point,
go ahead,
Madam?
sir.
While much has been said about the fact that there is an existing revised penal code provision on fake news, I hasten to add there hasn't been any prosecution or conviction on that basis of that provision of the law. And maybe this is because this is the reason why it hasn't been challenged in court. Because before you can challenge a statute as being unconstitutional, you must have an actual case or controversy. The fact that it is for all intents and purposes fake law probably indicates the position on the part of the executive that one should not prosecute on the basis of a law that is or may be declared as being unconstitutional. On the point again of government officials, again, the requirement of equal protection of the law is that the intent of the law or the purpose of the law must be germane to the legislation.
Sir,
what we are upholding
we will
is
go
the
back
truth.
and forth with this.
Yes, Your Honor, but what we are upholding is the truth, and when you uphold the truth, it matters not whether you're private or you're public. Thank you, Madam.
I agree. But then there are certain requirements of us as government officials that are not required of private individuals. What will you say? Are you saying now that private individuals should also submit salience? Should they also be punished for plunder and all these other cases because the law should be applied equally to all? Of course not. We have certain responsibilities. And even in the private sector, if you're a member of a corporate organization, there are also certain rights you waive as a commitment to that organization. But anyway, moving forward, again, you're welcome to attend that. And as I said, Mr. Roque, we've always been, most of the time, on the same side of the fence. Correct? We are
That's
here
true, Madam Chair.
to defend the truth. Nandito tayo para dyan. At ito namang posisyon natin, hindi naman panghabang buhay. Ang inaalagaan natin dito ay ang kinabukasan rin na kung sino man ang nandyan, yung mga batas na nakakatulong talaga sa ating bansa ang manaig. Kaya tama kayo. Pagdating sa deliberasyon nitong Senate Bill 1680, sabihin ninyo na useless ang Revised Penal Code 154, siguro dapat pati yan ma-repeal na rin. At ang 1680, wag natin ituloy. Ang opinion nyo ay mahalaga. Hindi lamang dahil kayo ay spokesperson ng presidente, kundi dahil matagal na ninyong pinag-aaralan ng batas, kayo ay practitioner, kayo ay Pilipino. So, itutuloy po natin ang pagdinig na yan, pero sa ngayon siguro, pagdamutan na natin ang opinion nitong ating mga foreigners na alam naman natin ay sandali lamang dito, pero
Madam
laki
Chair,
po ang responsibilidad din nila.
May I now ask to be excused because it's an 11 o'clock hearing and I checked earlier with the Malacanang Press Corps if they will mind if I do my press briefing here in the Senate, and they said yes because apparently they all have beats to meet, and unless I make my briefing in Malacanang, they will not have their stories. All the stories will be submitted by the Senate beat.
You know, Secretary Roque, you will be sorely missed if you're not there, so please, you are excused, and thank you for your
Thank you
presence
very
here
much,
today.
Madam Chair. Thank you for your time and indulgence.
Okay, moving on. May we begin with Facebook, perhaps?
Thank you very much again, Madam Chairman. So as I mentioned, my name is Simon Milner. I've recently moved to this region, having worked at Facebook for 6 years. Up until 2 weeks ago, I was working in London and being responsible for Facebook's public policy team covering the Middle East and Africa, as well as the UK and Ireland. I was excited about the opportunity to come to this hearing so soon after beginning my role, because having talked with my colleagues in this region, including Ms. Devi, you're going to hear from shortly, I know that as a company we care about the Philippines, we care about its people, and we care about this issue. And the fact that I'm new to the Philippines does not mean that Facebook is new to the Philippines. And you're going to hear from Claire shortly about the work that she has been doing and with our colleagues with a range of partners here in the Philippines to address the issues of concern. As Senator Poe herself said, this is a complex phenomenon and one where we are always trying to balance how can we help people access accurate information, how can we disrupt the purveyors of disinformation and false news without undermining freedom of expression. And that's why this is an issue which is more difficult, frankly, than other issues that we try to tackle, including things like bullying, harassment, terrorism, and other problems. This is a more complex issue. It's one which is much more nuanced, and what we can be absolutely certain of is there is no silver bullet. There is no one solution that will fix this problem. It is multifaceted, and it's definitely one in which we are deploying what we call the 4 Ps. So our policies address it, our products, and that's what I will mainly be talking about. We need a lot of people to address it, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, and then partnerships. So it's policies, products, people, and partnerships. It is our multi-pronged approach. If I could have the next slide, please. We're very keen to build an informed community on Facebook. We know that that's an important responsibility that we have, but there are some people who want to use our platform to do the opposite, to actually ensure that people are not well informed, to sow division within societies, including here in the Philippines. And so what we have is a 4-pronged approach that are laid out here to try to do this. First of all, we're about stopping bad actors from using our service. This is not about your least favorite actor in Hollywood. This is a technical term that's used within our industry to talk about people who are malicious, people who want to use services like Facebook, and we're going to hear from Google shortly, use online services with ill intent, for criminal reasons often. We call them bad actors. So we want to stop those bad actors using our service, and often those people will use our service with fake accounts. So we're happy to answer more questions and explain more about what we're doing to address the problem of fake accounts, hacked accounts, issues around account security on our service. The second area of work is to disrupt economic incentives. Much false news and misinformation is not political in nature, but actually economic. It's people who are trying to use salacious and sensational headlines to get people to click on those, get them off Facebook, and into a low-quality environment where there's lots of what we would call spammy advertising, and to encourage people to click on those so that person can make money. Another phrase you'll have heard is clickbait. That kind of content is actually economically driven, and what we are doing in a number of ways, and we're again happy to explain more about this, is to disrupt those economic incentives. And the third area is newsfeed. So the most important product that we think is at play here is our newsfeed product. One of the reasons why you're right, Filipinos use Facebook for more time during the day, I've already seen, is because of the traffic. So people, when they're sitting in the traffic here in Manila, maybe the president's spokesperson will be doing the same shortly. If you've got a couple of hours on a journey, what do? You go on to your favorite social media app. We're very pleased that for 66 million Filipinos, that's Facebook, and therefore people do use newsfeed a lot. One of the things we've done a lot of work on is to think about how we rank content on newsfeed to ensure that people are much more likely to see the kind of high quality content early on in their newsfeed, and that's the content that they're interacting with. Both public content, but also content from their friends and family. So we've done a lot of work around newsfeed ranking. I'm now going to turn to my colleague, Ms. Devi, to talk to you about the work we're doing with communities and partners to try and empower people to address this problem.
Thank you, Simon, and Madam Chair, it is good to see you again, and thank you for having us. For those that don't know me, I've been working in the Philippines for 10 years. Initially, when I started working here, I was working on digital literacy, traveling to barangays and setting up centres, and that was just about teaching people how to physically use technology. And what I saw is that Filipinos have a natural affinity and amazing use of it. What I see since I moved to Facebook 2.5 years ago is that digital literacy has evolved, and now we have to not just teach people how to use the technology, but to understand what they see. My whole role is around local partnerships and empowering communities, so I want to take you very quickly through some of the things we've been working on for the last 2.5 years. If I can have the next slide. First of all, at a broad reach, working on public education, so using the reach of our tools to get information out there. Starting in 2016 with the launch of our Safety and Bullying Prevention Hub with resources for students, teachers and parents. Then last year we saw the emergence of false news, and globally, including in the Philippines, we released tips that you could see across the top of our news feed for spotting false news online. This was viewed more than 30 million times alone in the Philippines. What we heard though from our partners is that while this was good, it needed local and it needed nuance. So we worked with a local designer, and just yesterday we released into the newsfeed the first of these 6 tips designed here for identifying false news. And in the first 24 hours with the first one out, we've already had more than 500,000 views of those tips, and largely positive comments with people wanting more information about how they can do this. I can have the next slide, please. The next area that we want to work on is with media. So understanding that having a strong news ecosystem is important. We've been working with many journalists, first of all on journalist safety. So our team researched, we went from Cebu to Manila to Davao to speak directly to journalists about their concerns. And from that research, we have made changes to the product that have been rolled out internationally, including updates to our harassment policies, and that came directly from hearing from journalists here in the Philippines. Secondly, we see an opportunity as Facebook to bring together people from the media across the region, and last year we launched our News Literacy Working Group with representatives from the Philippines, and we had them come together to work with us on the future of news. That group will be reconvening in April in Australia this month, and we continue to work with them. This is an ongoing process, and we need to hear from our partners. If I can have the next slide. Because we want to go further than just our products and our policies, we see in the 21st century learning the importance of equipping our students and of course the teachers with the ability to think critically. With all this information that is coming to you, how do you understand what you're seeing online? How do you distinguish between what is true, what is false, but also the nuance of opinion and perception? We also added to this something that I care very deeply about, which is empathy. So even if you look at all the information and you understand the source and where it's coming from, what will be the impact of you sharing that? What is your responsibility in the Filipino community to create a positive social space? We're working with Globe Telecom, who have an amazing program that they've been running for the last 2 years that's reached more than 40,000 students, and we added an extra module to their outreach specifically on critical thinking and empathy that we piloted and is now available to teachers. We've also been doing a much more in-depth pilot with Mano Amiga, a small non-for-profit school, which was a 5-week intensive program with years 7 and 8 to understand how we could match these skills into the learning objectives of teachers and build it into the values education that the Philippines values so highly. We've taken that and we're now working with DepEd to understand how we can best ensure that these critical skills get maximum reach to students and teachers. I can have the next slide. And then finally, I want to talk about what we're doing in 2018. I was here again 4 weeks ago, again connecting with various partners to understand what do we do next. And what we heard is that there is this need for this to be built into as many of our outreach and programs as possible. So we've been partnering with DTI on training for women entrepreneurs and small businesses. And then DICT will be assisting us to get education around safety, critical thinking, out to the 2,400 centres that they now have around the Philippines, and we're working with them on the best possible way to get that information out there. We also heard very loudly that there was a concern for Filipinos living overseas. So working with OA, we're looking at creating a localised video in English, Tagalog, Visaya, and various local dialects that they will be able to see before they leave the Philippines to understand the positive side of social media and also how to discern what they see. And finally, in January this year, I ran the first trial. I provided training to an NGO based in Singapore, where I live, that outreaches with business education to Filipino foreign workers. And we ran a session on safety and news literacy. And we're taking that as a model and looking for other non-profits right around the world and embassies that work with foreign workers to ensure that this education can get out as far as possible. So I just want to finish by saying this is something that we as Facebook and me personally care very deeply about, and we do this always with partners. So we're open to hearing and understanding where we can work with people on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Claire. You mentioned there are 6 tips that you publish in your page to be able to guide our netizens and be able to empower them and figure out which one is fake news and which one is real. Can you mention those 6 steps?
So some of the tips that we look at there, the first one that we released was often that false news will have large, grand claims in the headlines. We also encourage people to look back and see what the original source of the story is. So look for other people that have shared the story. Sorry. We also look at the URL. So often it may have a false or misleading URL that people see when they first get.
Okay, that's a little bit technical. Explain, I mean, this is for the benefit of our listeners. Okay, how will an ordinary citizen determine if a URL is legitimate or not?
Absolutely. Thank you for pulling me up on that. With a URL, often there is a fake or a version of a popular site that you see. So we call out in the tip an example of one, and we encourage them to look closely in the top of your browser what the URL is or the link that you click on.
Okay. Can you show us an example there? For example, like a URL of like a CNN or whatever, but instead of like Al Jazeera, they'll say Al Jazeera Network or Al Jazeera TV, but not necessarily.
That's correct, with a dash or it goes through to something else. The example we used in the tip to really hit home was notveryreliablenews.org. Because we really wanted to we really wanted to emphasize and get people's attention. But I would be happy for anyone's interested to share the full 6 tips and the illustrations that we've got after the hearing.
Okay, like give me another tip.
In terms of finding fake news?
Yes.
So we're also looking at in the headlines, often there is extensive exclamations or claims. So whereas standard news sites will often have a very clear, concise headline about what the news is.
But have you employed this yourself? I mean, if you see that, what action do you take in Facebook? I mean, it's clearly a dubious URL. Do you block it? What do you do?
Absolutely. Funnily enough, I have a personal story on this because my husband would often sit next to me on the couch and say, "Have you heard this?" And I have now trained him that he will start saying, "Oh, hold on, I'm just checking what this is. No, it's all right, I'm not going to share that story with you." So with these things, I think as each person learns and as each of the students we work with learn, they become an advocate. As we worked with Manu Amiga School, one of the questions that we got from the students was, how do we bring this subject up with our parents and teachers? Because often we see them looking at these things and getting confused. So again, having very clear tips for them about headlines, about looking at sources, about looking at how many people have reported the news, the dates, are things that we see works.
No, I understand, but does this go against your policy, let's say, in curtailing, not to curtail freedom of expression, meaning if it's clearly a fake news site, do you have a directive from your corporate leadership to take it down, to block it, or do you just allow it, but your stance would be to educate the public to be able to discriminate?
That's an excellent question because it gets to the heart of the challenge here. We do not think it's right for Facebook to be the arbiter of truth. We do not have a policy that says you can only post things on Facebook which are true. Because actually you imagine how difficult it would be for us to discern that and to decide it. However, what we do encourage people to do is also to let us know if they see something that they believe is false news. You can report it to us. It doesn't mean that that's then against our terms, but what we then will use is as a signal that this is the kind of content that we want to reduce its distribution, push it down the news feed, mean it gets seen less. And also, one of the things we've also done is partner with third-party fact checkers to also help us do that. So it's not to determine content that should be necessarily taken down, but it is about content that which should get lower distribution because it's less good, it's poor quality content on our platform. Now this is difficult, it's a very difficult area because I know in talking with policymakers elsewhere, their view is, well, why don't you just take it down? And actually when we say to them, how often have you seen a report in a mainstream publication, including perhaps some of the ones around this table, which you believe is wrong? Do you think that therefore we should be taking that down because you tell us that's wrong? So in our view, that's not the right judgment for a platform like ours to be taking, however uncomfortable that might be. But if we get enough signal, both from the users of our platform, from our third-party fact-checking partners, then we can, as I say, impact the distribution of that content, mean it's less likely to be seen by as many people.
Okay, sir. Actually, there's a report by a certain Jonathan Ong and Jason Cabanes on paid troll networks being professionally operated by PR executives in our country and in many other countries. I mean, we've heard about Russian actors, and you made a presentation, you said you'd be happy to expound on it. They're primarily deployed through Facebook in an orchestrated way. Now, they're using fake identities and seeding messages in established FB groups. Can you tell us, I know that this is a very difficult thing that you have to balance, but what efforts are you exerting, at least humanly possible, without necessarily curtailing any particular rights and freedom of expression, to clean up this environment and protect users also from such disinformation? Can you tell us?
Absolutely, and to be clear, that's a fake account is against Facebook's terms. We do not allow people to have an account on Facebook where they are not, which is inauthentic. And so, irrespective of whether that inauthentic or fake account is being used to spread fake news, we can act on it, and we do that. And some of that is based on. Do you want to ask another question before I complete, or you wanted to come in? Shall I complete the point, or?
Yes, sir. Please
Okay.
go ahead, and I'm going to ask you to define a fake account for
Okay.
us as
Happy to do
determined
that.
by Google.
By Facebook. It's fine.
By Facebook and Google.
Okay. So we use a combination of factors. It used to be that a lot of what we were based on was people telling us. So based on reports, but increasingly we are using technology, including what we call machine learning. So we are looking at attributes associated with fake accounts. And that could be the name on the account, but it's much more likely to be other kinds of behavior. I hope you will understand why I don't want to talk in detail about that kind of behavior, because we don't want to tip off the bad actors about the kind of things we are looking for. But it's the kind of, because we can look for certain attributes and behaviors, means we can attack this at scale. So we don't just take down the odd account, we can take tens of thousands of fake accounts down. And this is an important priority for us because, as I say, it's often fake and inauthentic accounts which are being used to propagate false news.
So, sir, in a day, about how many on average do you take down? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean in just one region or one country, but on average in the world.
I understand why people would like us to have more numbers on this, and we will have more numbers soon. You'll have
But in the Philippines, do you see a pattern, sir?
Look, the Philippines is it's a very big market for us. You mentioned earlier it's our 6th biggest market in terms of the number of people using
So
the service.
we're one of the biggest markets.
One of the biggest markets.
Okay.
But the kinds of things that we see here are actually quite similar to what we see elsewhere. And this is not a phenomenon which is unique to the Philippines. So people who want to use our platform for ill, both state and non-state actors will use similar kinds of techniques, including creating fake accounts at scale. So I'm afraid I do not have a number that we can share with you about how many we've taken down in respect of the Philippines, but we are expecting to be able to share more information about this globally in the coming months.
Actually, sir, there's one particular unique incident here where a blogger, for example, posted something against a particular public personality, and her posts were taken down. But these were actually based on historical facts. I think I've mentioned this to you, Ms. Claire, when we met. You were able to restore that. Did you issue an apology or an explanation as to why you did that?
So anytime we get a report and we make a mistake, we do issue an apology. I think in each of the cases, they're often very nuanced, and understanding the background is important. But it is something that, first of all, I think any fake accounts that are reported to us, we take action on and we investigate. Where we make a mistake, where we get the content wrong, we issue an apology and we will restore the content.
Okay, the media practitioners that we have here, I'm sure you have a lot of questions in mind, and if you'd like to ask it, you can address it to me. If you would like me, I can ask them for you, to our resource persons here, since anyway they're here now. But perhaps while we have them here, I can ask Ms. Hontiveros. Okay, or maybe Google, if you can. Google, you know what? I think that you're one of the most important tools that we have, and not just for me personally, but my colleagues here. We usually Google certain information to verify. But how are you able to filter also information that is posted on the web?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you for having me.
And also, how do you determine, for example, I type in a certain thing, malnutrition in the Philippines. How is Google able to select what the top search is? Is this something that is paid for? Is this something based on the number of visits in that particular site? How do you determine the top posts?
Yeah, so I think there are a few questions noted in your questions, Madam Chair. So thank you again for having me here today. I think to answer your questions directly, you can't pay your way up to the top of the search rankings. You can, however, buy ads to show that you want.
Sir, can you speak closer to the mic? Okay, can we begin again?
Sure.
Can we begin?
Yeah. To answer your question directly, you cannot pay your way up to the top of the search rankings in Google. All the ranking in the search results are determined by an algorithm that takes into account various factors. One of the factors
it's determined by
an algorithm.
An algorithm. Okay, the algorithm is.
And one of the factors that we take into account very, very seriously is the importance of trusted and high quality content. So,
okay,
for instance,
could you
news
say
content.
that importance of content?
Yes.
Who determines that?
So, for instance, we look at authority. Newsrooms, for instance, are treated as sources of authority, which is why you will see that we search for breaking news, for instance, in the Philippines. We will reflect. You see that the top search results will all be reflecting those on newsrooms. And I think this is related to the question of how then do we ensure that the users are getting to the right content, as you put it, right? I think if you go back to our mission statement, which is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful to users, that is our remit to our users, right? And to that regard, it is important to us to continue to provide high quality and useful information to the users. So we do that in a number of ways. Specifically with the newsrooms, we work very closely with them to make sure that they have an understanding of the latest technology.
Okay, so you have a newsroom.
Yes.
Okay, your newsroom is composed of. Do you have one in the Philippines?
No, we work with newsrooms.
You work with newsrooms.
Yes.
So you work with, let's say, ABS-CBN.
Yes, indeed.
How exactly do you interact with them? Can you please lay out the procedure here?
So I'll mention two main things we work with them. So one thing is through our Google News Lab, we work with news publishers to help them produce high quality journalistic content. So what do I mean by that? So a lot of times users are now demanding for interactive and data-centric content in which they can better understand the issues they're looking for. So this, for instance, we ran workshops to help them understand how we use technology to produce news stories that are reflected using data, using trends, to help users get better context of the issues they're looking for. We also teach through partnerships with newsrooms such as, if I have my data here correctly, we recently ran one with Cebu Sunstar to train journalists and journalist students on the use of fact-checking tools so that they can also fact-check before they publish a news article, which allows then users to be very clear, right, that, oh, this article has been fact-checked and these are accurate data, which they can trust.
So ABS-CBN, do you have a representative that deals directly with search engines like Google? Are you aware of that, ma'am?
We have our digital unit that deals with Google, but I'm not sure in what extent and capacity. We are also working with Google about the Google News Lab. However, it's more on how to use the Google site for certain things, but not that extensive. So I cannot really answer that.
Mr. Lee, so do you know anybody from ABS that you work with, or GMA even, or Eagle Broadcasting?
I do not work directly with the newsrooms, but I'm happy to come back to you with information on exactly kind of workshops and the names of the journalists that we work with.
Okay, sir. Now, I would like you to either verify or dispel this. So you're telling me that it's not necessarily something you can pay your way through to the top. Okay, you're saying that. It will be based on an algorithm, maybe based on the number of searches and the credibility of the site. But you have a person determining this, not an AI. I mean, I just want to be...
No, there is no person to determine what gets to the top of the ranking. It's done by a set of criteria determined by the machine. If you think about the millions of websites out there...
Okay, so a machine determines this. Okay, but you cannot deny the fact that if somebody pays for an ad or somebody pays for an article, you can actually make that search more visible. Am I correct? Maybe not at the top, but it will come out. Do you have that service?
Yes, but it depends on... We have very strict policies on what gets to be served as an ad. So misrepresentative content, for instance, will not pass our strict policy to be served as an ad to a user.
Okay, so do you have an office here that an individual can go to? I mean, because I need to know to what extent you operate as a media entity in the Philippines. Okay, so let's say I would like to post something of relevance. It's based on fact, but it's obviously something I would like to push for. Can I go to Google and then discuss this with you, pay a certain price so that, and a certain amount?
So let's take, for instance, if you are a health authority and you want to spread and inform users on the need to, say, have a healthy diet. Indeed, you can work with Google to develop an ad campaign to inform users on the value of healthy eating. That is definitely doable. However, if your claim is that eating rice will cause you cancer, that is clearly not something we will allow as an ad.
Okay, we've mentioned this already, that the Philippines is one of the top social media users, and Facebook, Google is like very much, well, omnipresent here. Now, I'd like to know, how much did you earn from your exposure here in the Philippines? Facebook, how much did you earn last year based on users from the Philippines and your exposure?
I appreciate the question, but I'm afraid I cannot give you an answer on that. We do not break down our revenues by individual countries to be able to provide you with that number. You can see our accounts are public, and they do provide information about how much we make in the major regions of this world, but not individual countries.
Okay, so for example, worldwide, how much did you earn last year?
I recall, but I can confirm in writing, that our total revenues are around $40 billion last year.
Okay, so 40 billion gross, right? Or is this
gross? That's right.
That's gross revenue. Now, perhaps if there are anybody here, if the Philippines is like one of the top 3 users of 40 billion, I'm sure we can make some sort of I mean, it would be very difficult. But have you paid any taxes in the Philippines?
So we pay tax on we obey the tax rules in every country in which we operate. Again, we can provide information afterwards in terms of what that means in respect of the Philippines, because we do have operations here. But I don't have that number to hand, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I understood we were here to talk about false news and misinformation, which we're very happy to talk about. If there's other information you'd like which is not relevant to that, I'm happy to provide it afterwards.
Well, as you know, public hearings go this way. And sometimes while you're here, we do ask those questions.
I understand, but we may not have that information
Right.
to hand.
No. We will just ask it. And of course, we know that you're compliant. If there are any shortcomings, it would be on our end because maybe we didn't clarify enough the responsibilities of certain foreign media entities. But my point is, I hope that you value also the importance of the Philippine market. And I know that your presence here is sort of signifying that. But you should also help us.
Yes, and indeed we've had an office, our office in the Philippines opened in, I think, March 2016. That office is mainly focused on helping businesses in the Philippines, large and small, but particularly large ones, make the best use of our platform, both to market their products and services to people in the Philippines, but also abroad. And indeed, that's a big part of the work that Ms. Stevie and colleagues have done around small businesses.
I might just add to that, with the small business program that we run, partnerships with Connected Women and Bayan Academy, this is providing free training, often to individuals about how they can use the free, or as we call it, organic part of our services to get their business online. And we've seen many cases of people being able to put a business up, whether they're freelance designers, virtual assistants, bakers, using free technology to connect to friends and family.
I mean, I understand because your founder believes in building the community. And I think this is one example where you're doing that. But on the other hand, I think that it's also important to disclose if you have any particular clients in government. Is the government working with you? Is the government paying Facebook for a particular service?
In terms of the partnerships that we work on with this small business training, these are done as a partnership where often the people we work with provide the reach or the venue as opposed to paying us to deliver it. We provide the services and the training at no cost to the
So
individual.
what particular department of government?
So we're working at a working level with DICT.
DICT.
We've also met with the Department of Small Business, so we're working with them on how we take what went to 5 cities last year to 7 cities, very much at the working level to get these things out as far as possible.
Maybe ask now our media practitioners, maybe with Ms. Hontiveros. Ma'am, you've heard the statements of Secretary Harry Roque. What do you think about, well, of course, we need to be able to balance freedom of expression and also responsibility as media practitioners, for example, or government officials. What's your opinion, let's say, on fake news and how to be able to curtail it? And our responsibility as media practitioners, ma'am. Don't ask questions as well as you do, but you get the drift, right?
Not used to this. Well, ma'am, for CNN Philippines, we have a very strict standards and practices, which we adhere to. We believe in responsibility in journalism. If, for example, we come across information, we have a 2-source rule, at the very least, 2 very reliable and independent sources. In terms of fake news, we are very careful about what we air because everything that comes into the newsroom, we check, counter-check, verify, double verify. We do our best to always make sure that what we air is very reliable information. Reliable meaning that it comes from an authority, for example, whether it is someone in government or a private individual who would be very knowledgeable.
Authority by government.
Yeah, yes, also.
Yeah. Okay. So a 2-source rule.
Yeah, actually that is one of the very basic rules in journalism. It is not just us in CNN Philippines practices that, all the other networks do the same thing. And that is a minimum. So, for example, if it is a one-source story, we're very, very careful about it. That's something Philippine media in general has been practicing over the last decades. Yeah.
So, what is your opinion now on, I mean, personally, about maybe you can define to me what fake news is. Okay, I mean, obviously it's almost like self-explanatory, hindi makatotohanan. But I'd like to hear it. I mean, from each of you that are here.
Well, as most journalists understand, journalism is a field of verification, so that anything that anybody says cannot be taken for granted that it's correct, right? So, but then there are primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, so that if it's primary source, then you take it for level of credibility, then it's higher compared to a tertiary source, for example. So if you hear it directly from a government official, for example, then you understand that since it's a primary source, he was there, he was present, he's making an announcement, then you understand that it's correct. Therefore, the level of it being fake news is much less than, for example, if you heard it from the wind, for example, right? So in CNN Philippines, as Pia was saying, we do have, I think, 600 pages of standard and practices, 65, that it would take you, and there's an exam at the end of it after you read it, to make sure that the quality of the news that we come out with is correct in the sense that the source, you heard it directly from the source, or that it's been checked, double checked, so that sometimes we do get information that we find suspicious, we don't come up with it until we have 2 or 3 people saying the exact same thing and with the same circumstances. I think CNN Philippines is very responsible that way, because we understand that reputations are at stake and we owe a service to the people that we serve. We're very, very conscious of that, and I think the problem is not so much journalists, because journalists know what their responsibilities are. We are trained to make sure that everything is above board, on the level, and as much as possible has been verified over and over again. But then there are other people now that because of the information explosion, and the other sources of information do not have the same kind of necessarily kind of training the journalists have.
But they also do provide a balance, right? I mean,
course.
somehow, because they also check mainstream media. Maybe I can ask Miss Varona, who's a blogger but appears in mainstream media through the ABS-CBN website. If so, you have both sides. You're a blogger, you're an opinion maker, but you're also responsible because you are in a particular mainstream media site. So tell me, what are your thoughts about this on all our discussion today?
Aside from being a thank you, Madam Chair. Aside from being a blogger, and I do write in-depth reports, I used to work with citizen journalism for 3 years, and the young people in this country are thirsty for knowledge, not only how to vet the information that they gather, how to process them, how to disseminate them in the best way possible, because they instinctively know that if they do it well, it probably increases the odds of problems in their communities getting attention and getting solved. So the youth are okay there, no? I totally agree with you when you say government officials do need to be held to a higher standard, no? Because the government gets mad. I mean, the president gets mad and he hurls fake news charges for every report that he doesn't agree with, even when these have clearly been vetted. But we have Secretary Roque, I'm sorry that he's not here now, defending on a spurious fake marketplace of ideas, the deliberate spread of disinformation by government officials, including, Secretary Martin, ASECs of the PCO, okay? So these are 2 different things. Do we want a legislation against them? No, but we do want government agencies to hold them accountable to the code of conduct and ethical behavior of government employees.
Ma'am, can you give me an example of possible disinformation that
Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
ma'am.
It's deliberate and it's systematic. So one very major case back then where both Peter Lavinia and Mocha Uzon were working together when Peter Lavinia, who was still then working with government, spread this patently false graphic of a young child who had been raped and brutally murdered. And then he had the where this information is concerned, it's usually the intent that's important. And Peter Lavinia spread this on his Facebook page, picked up by Mocha and very many people. And his intention was to denigrate human rights advocates who were then protesting EJKs in Metro Manila and telling them, bakit kayo hindi nag-iingay dito sa kawawang batang ni-rape? And that child wasn't even in the Philippines. So inexploit yung batang ni-rape ng pinatay ni Peter Lavinia when that child was a citizen of Brazil. And it took a couple of us journalists to rake that out. No, ito yung problema eh. Kahit mga fans ni President Duterte, because I followed it on his Facebook page, were appealing to him to take it down because it was definitely not true. Did Lavinia even give them the time of day? No. He ignored it. He was a government official. And yun eh, when they use, the law is clear, they cannot separate their Facebook accounts from their duties as government officials because they're not supposed to follow one standard in the office and then follow another standard outside, as you know.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Well, as you know, Peter Lavinia is no longer the government, but he didn't issue an apology about that?
No, and the next thing we knew, Mocha Uzon was actually defending the spread of fake news by saying she's a blogger, not a journalist, and she doesn't have to vet information and all that. But she insults all the bloggers, including the millions of citizen journalists, including high school students who care about the fact that they need to vet information before they put it out. You will see citizen journalists correcting each other. Pag misinformation, yung natisod, nagkamali, they will correct each other. They learn quickly. But when we get these messages from government officials, it encourages the deliberate spread of lies which never exist in a vacuum. They always come with a secondary campaign of harassing people on the internet who may express dissenting views.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I know that this is also a struggle by Secretary Andanar, trying to maintain the peace with everybody. Everybody's like headstrong. But how do you deal, let's say, with instances like that? I know also Attorney Banag is very reasonable with a good head over her shoulders. But of course, with a very strong network and many different opinionated people. How will you answer what Ms. Varona stated? I mean, I'm sure you're also appalled when certain things like this come out. Sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't answer for Peter Lavinia because, number one, he's not here. He's no longer in government, and I don't work with him. Number two, I've already time and again reiterated that as far as the Presidential Communications Operations Office is concerned, we are very responsible in disseminating information using our official government media platforms, including PTV, including the Radyo Pilipinas, Philippine News Agency, and our on-the-ground information agency, which is the Philippine Information Agency. MOCA has a couple of programs under the PCOO. That is the DDS podcast and the Duterte Good News. Both programs are official PCOO programs. And as far as I'm concerned, all of the production, all of the stories that we have produced for MOCA And those two programs have been very good. And wala namang fake news na lumabas dun sa dalawang programa na sponsored by the Presidential Communications Operations Office.
Okay, so I've actually seen certain official PCOO postings, and I know you've been very diligent with your work. You've done a good job, even with PTV4. Basically, with the popularity of the president, you've revived the relevance of the station. So there, but I'm sure that there are also challenges within your organization. Maybe Ms. Banag, you can explain more clearly accountability of everybody in the PCOO, what your intention is, what you hope to do to be able to monitor yourselves.
Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity. As the PCOO, we make sure, the Secretary makes sure that everything that goes out of our media platforms are vetted, and we have a distribution thread that studies or looks into whatever press releases that we have to put out for all of those information officers all over the country, to which these news items coming from the Presidential Communications is addressed. As to accountability, ma'am, we work with the DICT on the policy of the social media policy for all government employees or officials, and it's actually a collection of all the laws that are already existing. And insofar as ASEC MOCA is concerned, if and when other people may see or may think that whatever she's putting out there is libelous, as it could, if she says something that would malign other people personally or officially, for that matter, then they can file a case against ASEC MOCA. And our office, Madam Senator, would actually opt not to give a definite definition of what fake news is. Because we have reservations, Madam Senator, that defining fake news as a state-level regulation could raise accompanying risks of a seemingly boundless government regulation and prohibition, which runs counter to freedom of speech and right to self-expression. With that said, Madam Chair, in our attempt to create or find a precise definition of fake news in this committee, we must also consider, we suggest that we consider the specific problems or harms fake news is doing to undermine our society's ability to participate in a rational discourse. And with that said, Madam Chair, we are not able, like CNN Philippines, we are not able to come up with a precise definition of fake news.
Okay, I know that you're being very cautious, but I see you agreeing, ma'am. You seem to agree with her, not to have with Secretary Banag. You seem to agree that there's no clear-cut definition. Please state your position on this.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes we say that what is fake to somebody might not necessarily be fake to somebody else. But there are certain rules that journalists go by, which is that if it comes from the government, if you have a document that shows that what you say verbally is correct, then you have to depend on it. You have to believe it, right? So, but there are certain parameters that journalists use to decide whether or not something is can go on air or can go to print. I'm very squeamish about having to define something as right or wrong, true or not, because really, who's to say, right? But there are certain expectations so that when, for example, a high government official makes an announcement and then you check it and it turns out that there's no document to back up that policy, for example, or that his lower official says, no, actually hasn't been vetted, then we have a problem reporting the news because...
But you know what? We seem to make this more complicated than it is. Pag ako, okay, as an ordinary citizen, for example, pag sabi ko fake news, ibig sabihin, hindi totoo, or may mali siya para magsinungaling. For example, what's totally fake? It snows in the Philippines. Okay, somebody can probably be a wise aleck and says, minsan nag-hail dito. But we know exactly what we're saying. There are certain things that are irrefutable. Okay, that's clear. But I know when you say, we have to be very careful because there are certain nuances. But there are also certain instances when you know there's a propaganda.
Yes.
And that is when
the line is blurred.
The line is blurred.
Yes.
Okay. So we have it. How do you determine intent and malice? Okay. So these are the things. But you go back to your safety measures by vetting it, by checking additional sources, etc. Of course, that our people have neither the time or the resources to sometimes double check. That's why it becomes toxic for some, when especially when you have that much influence. But anyway, so going back to that, pinapahirap pa natin yung definition minsan. Pag sinabi natin fake news, hindi totoo. Pero syempre, hindi totoo, mabigat din ang pwedeng maging basihan kung paano madedetermina yan. Pero hindi natin mapapagkaila, nasa revised penal code natin yan. Okay, so kung ang huwes ang magdedetermina kung ano yung totoo o hindi, sa tingin ko naman malalaman talaga kung may intensyon na malisyoso ang isang taong naghayag ng isang bagay na alam naman natin hindi totoo. Pero siguro, dahil kami nasa gobyerno, kayo ay media practitioners, tanungin natin ang academe kung paano siguro ang kanilang definisyon nito. Ma'am, Dr. Cheryl Soriano, De La Salle University.
I think crucial in the identification of what is fake news or disinformation is really intent, no? The intent to deceive. The capacity to create a piece of news with the intention to make it appear as real, but clearly, right, clearly is false. Is an example of this. So there are many different kinds of this. For example, one is creating a parody. For example, changing as they mentioned earlier, changing pretending to be Al Jazeera or pretending to be CNN, but in fact is a false site. The next example is, for example, taking a photograph that did not happen on that particular day, but making it appear as if it supports a particular argument or a situation for the purpose of creating a political sentiment or emotional sentiment from people. So it can vary in different ways, but I think crucial here is the intention to deceive.
Okay, so I think that's very important. There's malice and intention to deceive. Diba? Kasi sometimes it's very subjective, but there's a phone-in question from Senator Lacson. Kung paano ang workings ng page verification sa FB at kung makakatulong ito sa paglaban sa trolls at fake news. How can page verification in Facebook prevent trolling and spread the fake news? This is a question from Senator Lacson.
So this is in respect to the blue tick that you might see on someone's page to verify that they are who they say they are. That's something which is not automated. It involves specialist teams. Either, for instance, when it comes to news organizations, our media partnerships team will have a relationship with that organization to be able to verify that the people who are administering that page do properly represent that organization. And similarly, on the side of policymakers, we have a team that has a relationship with with policymakers, including, for instance, senators here in the Philippines, who will authenticate that this page is owned and operated by either that individual or their staff. So it's a human connection rather than a machine that determines that something is authentic and verified.
And so if it's reported that it's not authentic, you will take it down?
We will in certain circumstances, and indeed there has been a case under one of the senators who's not here today, who reported to us fairly recently, I think it was 24 pages that Senator Gordon reported to us 24 cases of, if you like, imposter accounts, and we took down, I think, all but one of them, because yes, we were able to confirm that they were indeed inauthentic and attempting to represent Senator Gordon.
Misrepresent. I think one of my colleagues, Senator Soto's Facebook page was blocked also, but that was an authentic page. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not familiar. I don't know whether Ms. DB is. Do you are?
Yeah, I think you did. But anyway, okay.
Sorry.
Anyone, Mr. Noku?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna ask questions from our Facebook representative.
Okay, you can ask me, then
yes,
I'll ask them.
through you. Since it has been mentioned in the presentation, one is, do they see, it has been pointed out in some news reports, both international and local, about a state-sponsored misinformation. And Philippines has been cited along with Russia, Turkey, China, and North Korea to be maintaining cyber warrior or armies. In Korea, North Korea, they even have one community of cyber warriors, just influencing the news. Also in Russia.
In the Philippines, apparently we do that.
And the Philippines has been cited in some news reports.
Okay.
As also having that kind of machinery. So
All right.
I want to find out from Facebook whether that is true.
Okay.
Or do they see such pattern?
Facebook, I'm sure that you know where all of the comments, interactions are coming from, if a particular area. Have you investigated this allegation?
We certainly have investigated allegations around state-sponsored activity by Russia in respect of the US and the UK, which is my home country, and we have reported on both of those. In the US, as you'll be aware, our colleague and senior counsel Colin Stretch has given extensive evidence to the US Congress on what we found in respect of not necessarily state, but certainly Russian clusters of accounts and activity by something called the Internet Research Agency, which was spending money and running ads directed at American users of Facebook during the presidential election campaign. And we've reported on that extensively. All that is in the public domain. Anybody can see it. I can also, we also looked at, in response to questions from parliamentarians in the UK, whether there was similar interference in respect of the EU referendum vote, which took place in June 2016. And the last act I undertook before I left the UK to move to this region was to let that parliamentary committee know that we had found no evidence of a similar cluster of activity targeting the UK from Russia. I know we can and do investigate whether there are actions that have been taken from attacking people or our network across a range of countries. I'm afraid I cannot tell you definitively what we found in respect of all of those countries that you've mentioned.
But there's been findings about Russian actors apparently, right? Have you determined that?
That's on the record. In the US, we're happy to send you a link to our extensive evidence.
Do you have any particular official position on this assertion?
On what, sorry?
On supposed influence by Russian actors in the outcome of the 2016 elections in the U.S.?
Yes, we have, and it's all in the public domain, and we can send that to you.
Well, what can you tell me in
yes, I mean,
short?
In a kind of briefly, we did find evidence of a cluster of, I think it was something like 230 accounts operated by an organization called the Internet Research Agency from Russia, which was spending money buying advertising on Facebook, not particularly supporting different candidates, but to sow division on using tools on our platform. It's something that we taken steps once we became aware of that to take those accounts down, obviously, and we want to take steps to ensure that that cannot and does not happen again, not just in the US but anywhere. And that's one of the reasons why we've really increased the amount of resources that we put into this work.
Sir, do you have the capability, for example, to check if there's a particular issue that comes out on Facebook, and then you have several responses, and if you zero in on those responses, you will be brought, I mean, do you have the capability to determine if it is within a contained area? The reason why I'm saying is this is if there's probably a call center that's all they do is comment on a particular topic. Have you found that out or determined that in the Philippines? Or are you even making an effort to?
I'm not aware of particular findings in the Philippines, but as I mentioned earlier in my in response to a previous question, the kinds of activity we've seen in the Philippines, including the creation of multiple fake accounts and attempts to spread misinformation, is similar to that which we found elsewhere.
Would you be able
but my
to...
understanding is that the concerns here are not about other states interfering. It is much more around activity within the Philippines, directed at the Philippines. But other than that, I don't have specific information to relate to this hearing about activity we found in the Philippines.
Okay, sir. But would you exert resources and also time to be able to determine if such incidents exist? Because, you know, the Philippines, we're really known to be like one of the best service providers for business process outsourcing, call centers. So I'm not even saying that it happens here, but I want to know if it happens here. So would it not be worth your time to invest in this?
So some of the things that we have done specifically in the Philippines is act on abusive behaviour, taking things down both in terms of abuse and then also working to some of the earlier points around clickbait.
Ms. Claire, very quickly, when you say abusive behaviour, is it based on a post or based on a comment on a post?
So according to our community standards, we do not tolerate hate speech or incitement of violence, whether that occurs in a post or in comments.
Okay.
Where they are reported to us and it violates community standards, we will take those things down. We also broadened our definition of what is an inauthentic account to try and catch these things before they start.
Okay, ma'am, if you can tell me, again, you're trying to balance the freedom to express, and sometimes it's an outlet. You know, in Facebook, you're so upset. You know, the government, they're not doing their job. You know, people in government are useless. But what would constitute hate speech? It's okay. Babala sa mga nanonood ng mga bata, ha? Pwede, you can be very candid here. Is it a curse, a vulgar curse? What if it's actually a news feed? Can you give me an example? A curse, any curse would be hate speech?
It could be a range of things. What we have is a series of what's called protected categories. So there are this is all about people, but we can see hate speech directed against somebody because of their gender, because of their nationality, because of their race, because of their sexuality, and there are several other.
How about their physical well-being?
Their physical ability, we could have that. So you cannot direct hate speech against somebody because they're physically disabled, for instance. So there are a
So-
range of different categories.
how do you do it?
Kind of speech, well, the range of speech could be, I mean, to give you an example, and actually religious belief. You can't say, I want to kill Catholics or I hate Catholics. It's not allowed on Facebook. You can be critical of a religion. You can say, I hate Catholicism or I hate Islam. But you cannot hate people because of their religious belief. And so there are, and obviously we look at that in respect of many different languages. We have many different language experts, and this is something that we are learning all the time. And one of the reasons for increasing our resources in this area from 10,000 people who work on this to 20,000 by the end of this year is so that we can improve the quality of our decisions, because we know that we sometimes make mistakes.
So your 20,000 people goes through, through.
No, it's not that.
all
It's
the
more
messages.
that.
What do they do?
So a number of things, but a good part of what they do is review reports. So any piece of content on Facebook can, and indeed, if you see something on Facebook you do not think is breaching our terms, including, for instance, for hate speech, report it to us. And every piece of content reported to us will be reviewed by a human being to determine whether or not this breaches our terms. So that's why we need thousands of people to help us do that.
Okay. Ms. Varona, you were raising your hand, then I'll go back to Mr. Nokum, then I want to hear the NBI, huh? Okay, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to, ask you to address this question to them, because I've been blocked by Facebook in a very strange case where the Facebook program told me that I violated community standards and I was suspected to be a fake account, which was very, very strange because I've been a verified account since around 2014. So I do thank the Facebook executives that we've run to for addressing our concerns, but it's the third party groups that we're pretty wary of, because aside from being blocked, and I've counted 3 times where I've been kicked out for a day.
What were you discussing at the time?
Oh, the Marcoses. It's always about the Marcoses that I find myself in trouble.
No. I mean, I'm not saying that I agree or I disagree. I haven't read it, but it also happened to Gang Kapati.
Yes. It's
Right,
for
and
me.
it's about Marcos. So
It's always the Marcos issue, and another time I'm also worried because one time I did report a threat, a sexual overt rape threat on Rappler reporter Pierre Anada to Facebook, and it came back to me that it was not violating community standards. And this was a guy showing his hand and saying this was what he was going to do to Pia with a picture of Pia, and he came back at me and said it was not violating community standards. And I actually I felt silly debating with a person I didn't know at all. And I said, how can you say that? And then eventually I did go to Facebook executives. They said they would look into it. Eventually the program, not the executives, the program came back at me and said, okay, upon your checking your report, we've decided it's a fake account. But I wasn't reporting a fake account. I was reporting a rape threat on a journalist.
Miss Claire, would you be able to answer this? I'm not even saying this has anything to do with the Marcoses or anything. I mean, is there a program already in Facebook that says if these are the topics that are to be discussed, then it will be automatically flagged down? Because I just find it so coincidental that it happens. That's number one. Number two, about the report, which is quite disturbing. It doesn't matter which side again. This is about rape, and why did she get that response? I mean, it didn't seem like it was vetted by your group, ma'am.
So I think, first of all, for that to happen to anyone or any kind of threat like that is a horrible thing to have happen, and not something that we want on our platform. We have very clear policies in this area around inciting violence and rape, and we don't allow it. In terms of some of the other incidents that have been brought up, without having them specifically in front of me, there is nuance, and we've made mistakes. We have apologised when we made mistakes. Things have been taken down or things have been returned to the platform where we found we were in error. And we we continue to try and work with people as these things come up, both in terms of our reporting tools and then also in terms of people, bloggers like Inde, to understand where these issues occur. But I just want to be really clear, for that to happen to someone is just a horrible thing that we don't want happening on Facebook.
You know, I appreciate that, ma'am. Of course, we all make mistakes. There are certain things that we cannot always monitor and it slips us. But do you have a copy of that they said that this is not a violation?
Yes, I do. I have screenshots of that, and I'd be willing to email it. And I must give Facebook executives credit. Once I had reported it, they did act on it. But, you know, I'm sure we're a few journalists who engage with them. I'm worried about the rest of the netizens who may not have the same access to Facebook that we do, madam.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Milner.
We share your concern. We do recognize that one of the, and indeed one of the reasons why our chief executive has particularly focused his efforts and the efforts of thousands of us on this issue is that we have not done a good enough job. And we should not be a service where you have to rely on the fact that you have a relationship with somebody in Facebook to try and get a problem like this fixed. We have to do better. And indeed, that's absolutely what we're determined to do. You asked specifically about, could we be using technology better? Absolutely. It's something that we have already been doing in, if you like, more black and white areas like terrorism. So we increasingly now use technology to identify content which is spread by people who wish to support global terrorist organizations like ISIS, where instead of relying on reports, we actually have now trained our machines to find this content. So 99% of the content we take down, which is ISIS related, we have found ourselves, it has not yet been reported to us. Now, so what we want to do is now take what we've learned from that area and apply it to others. It is harder in the context of something like hate speech, because often people will use what one might call hot language, like I hate you, I could kill a McDonald's now, and I notice I'm saying that just as the food's coming out. I don't eat McDonald's, I would say. But some of that language that people will use in a hateful context, they will also use in a jocular context with their friends and their family. So hate speech is a much, much harder issue to get right with technology, but that doesn't mean we're giving up on it. We are doing our best to try and address that. And actually, forums like this and hearing from the experts in this room and for those who've had bad experiences really helps us and helps our colleagues who work on this to get better at it. And we hope that by the time, in a year's time, you'll see a really significant improvement. We'll have fewer mistakes, never zero, I'm afraid, but fewer mistakes, and an increasing sense of that Facebook is getting much more right than it gets wrong.
You know, I appreciate you're showing sympathy and being able to feel the situation, and in fact, I can see it in you, Miss Claire, because you're a woman too. I think that there really should be no room for that, but I know it's very difficult to filter billions of information that come in. So as long as we know that there's an effort to be able to stop these sorts of hate speech, things that are violative of the dignity of women, of men, of children, anybody. I think that we need to have your commitment on that also in this country, because we would like to monitor all these things, but of course we cannot always do that. But Mr. Nokum, do you have anything else to add before I go the NBI, then Ms. Sharon? Sir?
Yes, Madam Chair. We support your call on Facebook to have to investigate and to have a bigger monitoring role in the Philippines, because Mr. Milner himself said that we are the second biggest market, and for a market of 60 million, I think 20,000 is very few people to be watching on that market. And also, Ms. Claire mentioned about the click farms. You know, in the country, we have dictatorship by numbers among social media operators, harassment by numbers, because just because this blogger or this social media personality has 5 million, 2 million, 3 million followers, then they use that number. But we also see a pattern where many of that number, the likes, the shares, and the comments, were bought through click farms. And these click farms exist in Bangladesh, India, and that's a fact. I don't know whether Facebook has monitored this, but these click farms, and even in the country, they have become a multi-million industry as well.
Thank you for calling our attention to that. Are you familiar with this term, click farms? And have you investigated that, sir?
I've certainly seen reports on it. I'm not an expert on it, but we have, this is exactly the kind of abusive behavior that we are deploying resources to address. So it's both abusive behavior by individuals, sometimes because they just haven't understood the nature of what's appropriate on a platform like Facebook. And indeed, that's one of the reasons why the partnerships that Ms. Devi talked about earlier here in the Philippines, and we have many similar around the world, are really important, because people often just make mistakes. They say things they don't mean to say, but what you're talking about is organized and it's determined. And so that's the kind of stuff that needs a different type of activity both to detect it and to address it at scale. And we're absolutely determined to invest in both areas, to help individuals and to address that kind of organized activity on our platform.
But sir, do you have the capability to be able to determine if certain comments, likes, clicks are coming from a particular area?
We do, and
okay,
indeed
so
that's
what are you doing about it?
Well, we've mentioned earlier, I hope you've recognized that some of the investment we're making is not just 20,000 people to review reports. Many of those thousands of people are also experts in internet security, in the behavior of bad actors, so that we can protect our community at scale from their activities by taking down tens of thousands of fake accounts, for instance, by blocking whole domains from having access to Facebook and to creating accounts. And these are, I'm afraid I'm not able to give you information about which countries these are emanating from, but this is a global phenomenon. And every country that I've been responsible for, this is something that policymakers are rightly concerned about. So we are, wherever the threats are coming from whichever country, we're determined to get better at tackling them, and also to work with industry colleagues, including our colleagues in Google and other companies who are not represented here, to learn from each other. And this is that community of security engineers are very communal. They like to learn from each other and understand what threats are taking place. And where appropriate, we can also learn from governments, because governments are also interested in protecting the cyber security of their nations. So that's something where we aim to collaborate as much as is possible in sharing information about threats and how to tackle them.
Sec Martin, I'm nice to you kasi baka pagalitan ako ng sister-in-law mo. Okay, Sec Martin, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'd like to address the question to you so you can address them, the suggestion. Since we had the second hearing a couple of months back, we have made strides at the PCOO to fight false news or disinformation. As a matter of fact, 4 weeks ago, we had the National Information Convention, which gathered over 1,800 government and private information officers nationwide. And it just saddens me because we invited Facebook to attend so that they can help us in at least teaching or informing all of the information officers that were present there. And it was the first time that the government actually gathered 1,800 information officers. And if the other IOs from the barangays just had the means to attend, I'm sure they would have attended. And our target, Madam Senator, is to have an information officer in every barangay, which is 42,000. We extended our invite to Facebook, but they they sent their regrets. And number two, my colleague at the Philippine Information Agency, Director General Harold Clavite, had a very sad experience also. During the height of the Marawi siege, there was a video that went around on Facebook, which was uploaded, and I'm assuming uploaded by the ISIS or a sympathizer of the Maute group. And Director Howie Clavite reported this to Facebook, and it was not acted after 2 or 3 months. So I would like for you to address the question and concern and suggestion to Facebook, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, Facebook, with your presence in the Philippines, I don't think it's too much to ask for you to have a representative in every government function that requests your presence. This is the best way to be able to feel your what do you call this, your involvement in the community, and not just in the government sector but even in the private sector. But you should definitely, if not make the Philippines a hub, I mean, give us a little bit more credit than you are already extending to us. I'm sure that at this point we're not even very clear about the fees that Facebook should be paying or any other international media outlets. And I'm not one who's going to be pushing for that, but at least extend us the courtesy and be present as you have here, which I appreciate. But in all of these gatherings, I think you're already part of the Philippine community. So you cannot treat yourself as just a foreign entity in this country. Otherwise, you would also not be getting the same courtesy from us. So that's one. So answer me and tell me why you weren't there. And then number two, also by this concern of Secretary Andanar about the Marawi incident video, am I correct? That they didn't address immediately. Am I correct, sir? Okay. Ma'am.
Okay, first of all, I will, the event specifically, I agree with you and I hear you. This is, I think, my 7th trip already this year to the Philippines. And as
then you should just be based here. What's the population of other countries compared to the Philippines? I mean, we have to be able to assert now our buying power, our presence in the international community, not just in the Philippines, but all over the world because of our overseas Filipino workers. You should have a main office here in the Philippines. We are sick and tired of having to call you in Singapore to come here. I mean, we appreciate your help. We appreciate the presence of Singapore and other international ASEAN communities in the Philippines in your cooperation. But the Philippines should have a main Facebook office here, especially with the number of citizens that patronize Facebook. Please go ahead and explain.
Yeah, I hear you. And as Simon mentioned, we did open an office here last year, which continues to grow. So we are investing. One of the challenges with events such as the PCOO one is the staff that are here at the moment. But again, we're growing the type of staff that work here. We are actually working with the PCOO on an event coming up for ASEAN and Japan in the area. So where we can, we really try. In terms of our programmatic work, how we're working with the government departments, we're also taking a train-the-trainer model. So providing the skills that they can also have training on Facebook locally and by the departments to make it easier when we're not here all the time. But I hear you on that and we welcome invitations.
Can I just add to that?
Yes, sir.
I understand, and indeed your heartfelt demand. I've heard from policymakers in other countries that have demanded to know why we don't have more people on the ground, and including why we don't have a phone number that people can phone when they have a problem. We have built a platform used by more than 2 billion people around the world, including 66 million people here in the Philippines. We genuinely believe the best way that we can help people, including officials in government, to make the best use of our service is not necessarily by employing hundreds of people in a particular country. Actually, the nature of these services is that by employing people in hubs like Singapore and others around the world, we can actually provide incredibly effective support for communities across the country. Now we do have an office here, it's growing. We will have a permanent policy representative here soon once we've hired that person. So we do recognize the Philippines is a big and important country for us. But I think you should judge us not just by how many people we employ, but also the partnerships we have, the actions we are taking when there are tens of thousands of people in the Philippines who probably report content to us. How effective are we at doing that? If I might respond to the particular issue that was raised in respect of this particular piece of content, my understanding is that this content was initially shared by people to condemn the actions, and that's often what we see, is that people will share content which is, as it were, propaganda content from terrorist organizations in order to condemn it. We recognize that sometimes can mean things which look and appear very uncomfortable can appear on our platform. Actually, once we understood the government's concerns about that, we did act on that content, so that content was removed. But I do recognize that's part of, once we have a permanent policy representative here again, that kind of conversation can take place more quickly. Because that person will understand the local context better. So I hear you, but I do not think the solution is always you must employ hundreds more people in a country to understand it.
Sir, no. I think this was just Mr. Nocum's concern. The 20,000 cannot possibly monitor, let's say, 2 billion or even 60 million in the Philippines. Okay. What we're just saying is that, of course, it's different if there's a human being that we can interact with here. I know you had a policy representative. Maybe you're in transition now. I wonder, I'm sure the perks of Facebook is quite good compared to other multinational companies in the Philippines. I wonder why the person wouldn't stay. Is it because the role of that person is not taken seriously? I think that whoever you employ as a policy representative in the Philippines should be somebody you take seriously, somebody you respect, and somebody you feel has the authority to be able to tell you the real situation. Because we also want you insulated from opinions of government or the private sector, but at the same time responsive to the needs of actually the regular citizens in the country. You cannot be partisan in a country. I understand that you have to maintain neutrality, but you also have to be responsive to real concerns. So a person that you will respect and listen to, and not just a dummy that you will install in the Philippines, would I think be more productive for us both.
I'm very happy to give you that reassurance. I've hired many people in my time at Facebook over the last 6 years, and every one of them that I've hired, including people that have then moved on to other roles, the most important thing is that they really understand and are members of the community that they are there to serve. The people whoever we hire here in the Philippines will be a bridge between the community of the Philippines and our company, and that means that they will both inform people here about what our company is doing to address concerns but also to make our service even better for people in the Philippines. So maybe we'll go from 4 hours to 5 hours because people will enjoy it so much. But also they will also be a very good voice for the Philippines in the company. And that's true also of the rest of our colleagues in the Philippines office. It won't just be the role of the policy person. I describe these jobs as both the best jobs in Facebook, but also the worst. They're the best jobs because you get to represent the country you love and the people that you're of, as it were. You get to represent them, but also you get real challenges. These are tough roles, so they're not easy to find people, but I can absolutely assure you, whoever we appoint into this role will command our full respect and will be an important interlocutor for you and your colleagues here.
A woman, I hope.
I can't guarantee
you
that.
The most qualified, I'm just saying. The most qualified. I don't want to be prejudiced to a particular group, but Ms. Soriano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions, hopefully, that you could ask Facebook as well. Reports last year showed that about 30,000 fake news accounts were purged for the impending French elections. If Facebook was able to do this in France, can Facebook do this as well in the Philippines, meaning purge fake accounts that they already know they can identify to be fake? The second question I would like, if they could clarify, is the issue on precision seed targeting. Social network theorists have argued that the most important catalyst for the spread of fake news was the precision by which the purveyor targeted an audience, a task that can be accomplished using the data that these platforms routinely sell and gather to advertisers as well. The key was to seed an initial cluster of believers who would share or comment on the item, recommending it to others through Twitter or Facebook. False stories spread further when they were initially aimed at poorly informed people who had a hard time telling if a claim was true or false. So it's precision targeting. When marketers use information on surfing habits, opinions, and social connections to aim ads at people with just the right interests, this can facilitate beneficial economic exchange, but in the wrong hands, the technology becomes a means for precision seeding of propaganda. So can Facebook clarify, for example, can social media platforms make more transparent the ad spending of specific political campaigns and user targeting on its site? So 2 questions, Madam Chair.
Facebook, would you like to answer the first question first, and then we'll go into the next?
So on the issue, you specifically asked about are we targeting fake accounts in the Philippines? The answer is yes. We're targeting fake accounts everywhere, and as I mentioned earlier, we expect to be able to say more about that in due course later this year about the effectiveness of our actions. On the issue of ads targeting, do you want to take this? Or should, go. I can absolutely reassure you, do not have an ad targeting tool that enables you to target people on the fact that they're less well informed. But we do, and I also want to correct, we do not sell data. Absolutely not. There is no selling of people's data on Facebook. What we enable organizations, whether that be charities, small businesses, and Stevie can talk about how we guide them on this, but also political campaigns. We provide tools that enable them to target their messaging in an efficient way. And indeed, the relevance of advertising is something that Facebook enables at scale. But we do recognize there are concerns about the transparency of that advertising. And this concern that, if you like, certain people are seeing some messages and other people are seeing other messages, and it's hard for campaigns to respond if you can't see the other person's message. So we are now absolutely committed to full transparency around messaging, not just for political campaigns, but for all advertising. So we're trialing this at the moment in Canada, but in due course, later this year, for all advertising on Facebook, you'll be able to look at any page and see what ads it's running. And so you can see if your opponent in a campaign, even including if that's a local campaign, you can see exactly what ads they're running and you can respond to them. We think this will be a major step forward in advertising transparency, and something we know that our community really wants to see. So we're committed to doing it. It's coming. It will be absolutely global, and so watch this space, and we will make sure. Hopefully, our new local representative will be able to inform you of that. But if that person's not here by the time we do it, we'll be letting you know.
Thank you, Mr. Milner. Maybe the NBI. Is there an NBI representative, sir? Is it you? NBI representative, meron ba kayong ugnayan sa mga social media platforms kung meron kayong mga iniimbestigahan, kunyari yung Facebook o kaya yung Google, sir? Kasi kunyari, child pornography, may nila live stream o mga bagay na ganon. Meron ba kayong kakilala na sa kanila na madali ninyong matatawagan? Paano po ninyo iniimbestigahan?
Ma'am, Madam Senator, meron silang facility, ma'am, for law enforcement. But for other cases, but insofar as libel cases is concerned, they do not respond to our any query that will be coming from us.
Meron na ba kayo napadala, sir?
Usually, ma'am, as a matter of procedure, we send them a communication insofar as identifying yung IP addresses.
Pero hindi po kayo sinasagot?
Hindi pa, ma'am. I know the challenges, ma'am, because of the voluminous requests coming from law enforcement around the globe. Pero hindi, ma'am. Hindi talaga.
Pero wala ba kayong automatic, like, We received your complaint or your letter, your correspondence, and we will respond to you within a certain number of days, sir?
Wala po, ma'am. For libel cases lang, ma'am.
Okay. Sir?
I hope I understood that. I'm using our good colleague here, Chris.
Wait,
who's helping
is your
with-
translator a Filipino?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Actually, I'd quite like, if you don't mind, just to touch on the issue you raised about live streaming of child abuse, because I want to. The Philippines is a member of the We Protect initiative, which is an initiative involving many governments around the world, technology companies, and charities to address this issue of child abuse online. I was at the first event of that, in which there was a combined presentation by the specialist unit in the Philippines, police, and the UK specialist organisation CEOP, with our colleague, one of our colleagues who liaises with law enforcement around the world, to show how we can help, we can support police forces here and in Europe to come together, to share information in order to, most importantly, safeguard those poor children in those terrible situations, but also to bring the perpetrators of those crimes to justice, both the people who are paying for those crimes, often in Europe, and the gangs who are organising that vile abuse here in the Philippines and elsewhere. So that's an area where we have a strong record of cooperation with law enforcement around the world, and particularly in the Philippines, to address those concerns.
Okay, but sir, there's another concern here. I know that you probably get thousands of libel complaints every day, but I think there should be a mechanism by which you actually respond to local authorities, and in particular our National Bureau of Investigation. Do you have a liaison that works with law enforcement in the Philippines?
We do. We do have a.
May we have the name of that person, and can you please provide us that person's name and contact information?
It's my colleague Jeff Wu is the person who leads this
And is he
relationship
based in
for
the
us.
Philippines, sir?
He's not based in the Philippines, but he absolutely has a relationship with law enforcement here.
Okay, will you have a law enforcement liaison desk here in the Philippines? I think you should have one.
Well, thank you for your input on that. I'm not able to give you a direct answer on it now. It's not a decision that I would make. But that doesn't mean that therefore we won't be responsive. We are responsive. We have a law enforcement response team that takes requests from law enforcement here and in other countries in this region. They're based in this region, so they can respond in a timely way to those requests. And we publish public data for the Philippines, as we do for other countries, on how many requests we get and in how many we provide.
Where do I obtain that data, sir?
We can send you the link to
No,
it.
okay, I appreciate that you can send it to our office, but if I'm a regular citizen...
Yes, straightforwardly, actually the best way is to use our colleague here from Google. Go on Google, look up Facebook government request reports, and that will take you direct. It's the best way.
So there's
It will take you
reciprocity, all right.
No, they just got a
Yeah.
very good search engine, and it will take you directly to that report. We
Okay.
publish a report every 6 months, and you'll see information there about how we respond.
No, you know what, sir, I also understand what you're saying, that the person doesn't necessarily have to be here to be responsive. I see that, like you do this on a regional basis. On the other hand, also, with just sheer number of people here in the Philippines, I think that it also sends a good message to us that we are important, that there is a human factor to Facebook, and it's not just all technology. There's a little bit of a human factor connection. Maybe that's all to send us your pure intent to be able to help in community building, as your founder has focused on that particular message recently. So I think that would be one, because how you say community building when you don't really have a representative in that country that we can interact with in the flesh. I mean that's one thing. Okay, maybe I can ask Mr. Tonyo Cruz your thoughts on our discussion today, sir.
Magandang tanghali po. Madam Chair, I'm happy that Facebook appeared before the committee to shed light on what it has been doing. But I think they have the problem could not be in the platform. Madam Chair, for example, we have many public officials here present. They have or maintain Facebook pages, websites, and many other digital properties. They are funded by our taxpayers. The management is funded by taxpayers. We employ staff to take care of these Facebook pages, to produce content. I think it is ultimately the responsibility of government to have clear rules. For example, it's quite absurd, Madam Chair, na magsusumbong tayo sa Facebook na may hate crime din sa Facebook page ng gobyerno o dito sa Facebook page ng presidente o dito sa Facebook page ng assistant secretary. I think Madam Chair, my point is because we're talking about accountability and responsibility, even before we ask Facebook, I'm sure we're not the only government, we're not the only country that uses Facebook. Considering that the government values Facebook and social media, I think the Senate could use its influence to try to compel executive offices to lay down their own guidelines. For example, is hate crime acceptable in the pages of the Office of the President? What happens
Sir,
if...
give me an example, because I'm not very up to date when it comes to these things. I don't check it daily, but give me an example. Was there an instance where there was a hate message in an official page, sir?
I'm referring, for example, Madam Chair, in posts of officials identified with the government, in the comments pages, for example, of government Facebook pages, there are...
I'm sorry, what government Facebook pages, sir?
PCOO.
Merong hate messages?
In the comments, for example.
In the comments. So I don't think they can control that all the time, but how about the official ones?
No, Madam Chair.
Give me an example if you're concerned.
For example, Madam Chair, if, for example, comments like threatening rape or murder against opponents of the President are made in a Facebook page managed by the Office of the President, what would the head of office do? Would they just allow the comment to stay?
Hindi ba nila tinatanggal?
Hindi po. Kaya nga po lumalaganap na okay lang na magmura eh. Na okay lang mag-threaten na grave threats or verbal abuse or unjust fixation. Sana mamatay yung buong pamilya mo. Sana ma-rape ka rin. Sana ma-rape ka ng brutal. We find these pages, we find these comments, for example, in news websites, but thankfully our news websites have comments policies. They're very responsible. It's a very tiring job, but they delete.
So tinatanggal nila.
Because they are responsible for the platform, for the website. Bawal yun eh sa kanilang comments policy. You cannot threaten violence, hate, etc. But oddly, Madam Chair, in our government pages, there's no such policy. And I find it personally weird that we have to tell Facebook that there's a problem, when in fact, that should be the responsibility of heads of offices.
Okay, so sinasabi mo, Tonyo, kasi ako, kunyari, pupunta ako sa Inquirer site, no? Pupunta ako sa comments. There are a lot of hurtful comments about anybody. Doesn't matter, pula ka, itim, dilaw, may hurtful comments. Pero wala pa naman, ako nakikitang sana ma-rape ka, sana mapatay ka, dun. So, either they clean it up to make sure that these violative statements are removed, or it just never happens in those sites. But I find it unlikely that it'll never happen in those sites because there are certain things that are also kind of... But you're saying that in PCOO sites or at least in officers of the PCOO that maintain their own sites, you can see these comments. Am I correct?
Yes, Madam Chair. Parang halimbawa po, sa Senado, meron po tayong may code of conduct ang mga attendees sa Senado. Hindi po tayo pwedeng pumalakpak kapag may plenary session. Tapos, kapag merong pumalakpak, pwede ka agad na sabihan ng
Actually,
security.
gusto ko ipa-amend yun eh. Yung palakpak okay lang yun, di ba?
So, ginamit ko lang po example.
But I agree
Pero
with you,
halimbawa nga po, our government prides itself with very strong social media presence. It should be responsible. They should be models for responsibility online, that we don't have to communicate with Facebook that these things are happening. Kasi halimbawa kung ang mga Facebook pages po ng mga ahensya ng gobyerno ay modelo, ay bawal dito ang bastos, bawal dito ang nagmumura. Dapat ginagalang ang babae, bata, may kapansanan. Dapat kapag may sagot, kapag may tanong ang isang mamamayan na nilagay sa Facebook as comment, meron po bang response time? Halimbawa, magtatanong sa Pangulo, pahina ng PCOO, ano po bang patakaran nila dyan? Wala po eh. So, sa mga private, halimbawa, sa mga private na mga ahensya, sa mga kumpanya, meron po niyan. Meron na pong mataas na level ng responsibility. May response time nga po eh. Halimbawa, sa mga brands, gusto nila within an hour, makapag-reply sila sa increase ng kanilang customer. Pero sa gobyerno natin, wala. Tapos nakikita po natin yung mga principal na opisyal ng gobyerno sa impormasyon, kailangan pa natin magsumbong sa Facebook.
Pero meron ka mga screenshots nun?
Papadala po namin.
Ganito, wag na natin bagitin yung mga pangalan na yan kasi baka sabihin sinisingle out, okay? But the point is ganito, kasi si Miss Varona, I'm sure, you're for freedom of expression, okay? So, kunwari ako netizen. No, I honestly want to know this, ha? And Miss Panago also, you help me here. Outlet ko na nga yung internet eh. Galit ako sa mundo eh. Karapatan ko sabihin, I'm mad, I'm upset. But where will my freedom extend to the point where it becomes already a violation or, let's say, a disrespect to somebody else, disrespect on somebody else's rights. Okay, so tell me, to what extent should it be? Makaluma ba tayo? Nasabihin halimbawa, yung sinabi ni Tonyo na, bawal tayo magsabi ng ganito tungkol sa mga babae, bawal tayo kasi, alam mo ako, galing rin akong showbiz, no? Masaya rin na may outlet eh. Hoy, ganyan-ganyan. Pero, kahit naman sa masayang ganon, may limitasyon din. Hindi ka rin magte-threaten or mag-ano. So, ma'am, paano ba yun? Does it curtail our freedom to express when we want to say, I hate the world and I just want you all to die? How? Tell me.
Thank you, ma'am. When somebody says, I hate the world and I hope everybody, dies, that's, hugot sa hangin yan. The dangerous thing is when these messages of hate, especially, and I have pretty much a regular recipient of this when they say, sana ma-rape yung anak mo para maano mo, para malaman mo, parang di ba, sana maano kayo ng drug addict. Marami pa yan eh. What else do they know? But all the major outfits will have very clear standards of behavior both on their websites and on the Facebook page. I know I used to have BMPM and it had very clear guidelines there. Ang bawal ho ay, you do not threaten anybody, period. For whatever reason, period, threats are not allowed. And everybody, from whether it's inquiry, are very clear and very determined to crack down on threats because you never know when a person who threatens online will take it on ground. No? Mahirap yan. You can, and to ignore these threats, because these are real threats, and there are laws that actually penalize these threats, would be to encourage more abuse. No? So personally, on my Facebook page, I don't mind when people criticize me, but when my friends attack a person, even those who may agree with my sentiments, attack somebody in a very personal, very hateful way, even without threats, I will take them down. Very clear yan eh. I always say, I don't care which side you represent, as long as you show abusive behavior on my page, you're out of here. And I think most news organizations follow that, and I really do hope that official government accounts should follow that. Totoo yung sabi ni Tonyo, mahirap po isa-isa eh. Minsan, kasi when I opened, I had 300 messages, nag-aaway ng mga tao, natulog lang ako ng 2 oras, nagbabangayan na yung mga tao, nag-iinsultuhan na. So it's tiring. But I think if there's anything that the government ought to invest in, it's to ensure that that on their pages, people act with decent behavior.
You know, the head of PCO, I know, Mr. Andanar is a very decent person. I mean, you see his demeanor. Okay, I'm sure you're frustrated too. So between both of you, what can you do to ensure also? I mean, comments, maraming hugot yung ating mga kababayan eh. Pero, paano po, sir?
As much as possible po, Madam Chair. And ideally, I would want to hire the maximum amount of people who can answer all of the questions that are thrown or sent on our Facebook account with 1.3 million followers. There was one time also that we started deleting comments. This was in the early 2016 of the administration. Tapos sinabihan ng mga kami, ba't nyo inaalis yung mga comment? Paano yung freedom of expression namin? So, damn if you do, damn if you don't. So, ang ginawa po namin, Madam Chair, kung sino mag-comment, whether it's for or against the administration, sige, comment na kayo ng comment. Kasi, total, ang administrasyong ito na iniwala naman sa freedom of expression. But let me just tell the body, Madam Chair, that, of course, I am one with everyone here who is against hate speech. Ayaw ko din ho ng hate speech. Ako, I am a victim of hate speech. Pero sabi nga nila, kailangan hindi ka balat sibuyas pag ikaw ay nasa gobyerno, kaya hindi ko nalang pinapansin. Now, if Tonyo can give me a very good solution and perhaps can sit down with me in the office so we can point by point maybe study the numbers, the budget of PCOO, at tulungan niya ako para makakuha kami ng
no, pero Seth Martin, hindi niya tinatanggal ngayon.
Hindi namin tinatanggal, ma'am.
Alam mo, sir,
lahat,
hindi, pwede naman niyo sabihin, okay, libre naman kayong mag-express ng sarili ng pananaw ninyo, pero wala nga mga threat na gano'n, na i-rape kita, o gano'n. Yung mga gano'n, sa tingin ko naman, grave threat na yun, kahit sa batas natin, medyo mali na yun. But, so kahit magalit pa sila sa'yo, makabastos sila para magsabi ng gano'n. And first of all, kahit naman yung mga vloggers natin, na mga magagaling, hindi naman sila ganyan din magpanta. Diba? Use your intellect to be able to criticize, to be able to express yourself. Don't take that, what do you call this, a very indecent and dehumanizing way of expressing. Tonyo, you were gonna comment on this since your name was cited.
Madam Chair, siguro, baka pwede na lang nating tanungin yung Facebook, because the Philippines is not the only country in the world that uses Facebook, and the Philippine government is not the only government that uses Facebook. I'm sure there are many other best practices of other governments regarding the use of Facebook, regarding limiting or stamping out hate speech and prohibited speech. Are there any experiences of Facebook working with other governments? Would they have suggestions on which countries to look at so that the PCOO could study?
Oh, alam ko that Facebook has an agreement with the European Union, right? Any hate speech, racial speech, anti-race speeches, these things are frowned upon and in fact violative in those countries in the EU. Am I correct?
you are. Actually, along with Google, and it'd be great to hear from our colleague at Google again, I think, because we feel that we're dominating. We, with them and other companies, have signed the EU Code of Conduct on Hate Speech, which is principally around ensuring that we get better at addressing reports of hate speech, that we are more effective in doing that and more accurate in doing it. We signed that roughly 2 years ago, and since then there have been 3 different tests of how well we are doing. The most recent was reported, if I recall, in December, and it showed that all the platforms, but I would slightly hesitate to say, but particularly Facebook, had got a lot better at addressing this issue. This is, however, clearly based on reported hate speech. It's not about the issue that has been raised around how governments moderate their own pages. We provide moderation tools as part of the training that we provide to not just to governments but other organizations, including companies. When it comes to the use of their pages, we explain how those moderation tools work, but it really is up to the administrators of those pages to determine whether or not they may want to make use of those moderation tools. Is there anything you want to add? What about Google?
Ma'am, you are raising your hands. And then GMA7 hindi ko pa kayo nadidinig. Siguro GMA muna, tapos kayo ma'am sa CNN. GMA.
Hi, good afternoon, ma'am. I'd just like to share our experiences with Facebook, especially given the recent changes in its algorithm. In January, they announced that they were de-emphasizing posts from pages and emphasizing posts from personal accounts and communities. So if you noticed over the past few weeks, if you've been checking Facebook, you're seeing less news on your site, on your feed, and less posts from pages that you like. The idea is that it will emphasize posts from friends, pictures, etc. But there's a caveat there in that the reach for paid posts isn't reduced. What we're seeing and what personally my friends who work in social media management are seeing is that Facebook is turning out to be more and more of a pay-to-play platform. So if you want your post to be seen, and if you're an organization, you have to advertise with.
Do you have an idea how much? Let's say for 100,000 views.
It's very interesting. It depends. It's an auction in that you can target. It's an automated auction in that you can target specific groups. For example, people in Makati you can target if you have a business that.
How much do you spend?
We GMA, for example, GMA News spends a minuscule amount just to test the effects. So
minuscule meaning how much?
It's 2,000 pesos a week.
Pero marami kayong reach nun?
Hindi ma'am. Talagang tinitingnan lang namin for study yung effect.
So 2,000 pesos mga ilan? Kasi marami ako nakukuha from Jessica Soho, very interesting links. Okay, yes. I don't know if this is her personal effort or this is GMA, but let's say 2,000 pesos. How many exposures does that get you?
That's about probably 5,000 new followers.
Kasi kunyari sa atin dito may 3 million na likes, no? Pero yung 3 million na yun, parang ang konti-konti lang ng nakaka-respond.
Yes.
Napansin ko noon, yung mga likes natin, ilang libo, tapos biglang nagiging 300 na lang on a regular basis or 500. So the engagement is lower. Anyway, so just direct your question.
Sorry, ma'am, kukwento ko lang kasi in the US, for example, the ads actually were what the fake news purveyors used to target particular groups during the elections. Yung Russian ads. Basically, they paid Facebook to place those ads and targeted particular groups who would be likely to share fake
Okay,
news.
so what's your question, Mr. Tordesillas?
Yes, ma'am. Ang ano ko lang, given that magkaka-election sa atin, and
Kasi competition na yung Facebook sa GMA.
hindi lang yun, ma'am. Kami nagko-comply, for example, di ba?
Oo, oo.
We do reporting on election spending, how many people place advertisements for us. I don't think Facebook does that. And perhaps that's something the committee can look into that kind of regulation. And also reporting. We don't know for example, if we see a fake ad or on our feed, we can't compel Facebook for now to tell us who placed that. For all we know, it could be a foreign actor, it could be an operative, it can be an official of the campaign. So there's no transparency there.
No, I see your point, and thank you for making that, for voicing out that observation. Number one, we're here for the free market of ideas. Ilabas. But whatever's do the Philippines. Diba? I mean, all of you are compliant as registered media companies in the Philippines. So if there's something that we can, that we rightfully deserve, let's say in terms of compensation, taxes or whatever, everybody should be compliant. Diba? Ilabas mo kung ano yung gusto mo ilabas, pero bayaran mo naman din kami
Yes,
na,
ma'am.
naayon sa batas. Ang problema, sasabihin ko na sa'yo ngayon, hindi, ang kakulangan sa atin eh. Wala pa tayong batas dyan sa mga ganyan. Eh ayaw naman natin basta maghimasok lang dyan. But I see your concern.
Yeah,
And,
actually, ma'am,
how do you monitor it?
Yeah, let me just share in Indonesia and Malaysia, for example, they're also studying introducing legislation about fake news, and part of it is taxing Google and Facebook so that there will be that trail of that basically you can run after the people who place ads.
Okay, well, I appreciate your inputs and your concerns about this. It's certainly something that we would be remiss if we didn't study, because everybody who benefits also from our consumers, our public, should have their contribution in the national economy. DICT, and then I'd like to hear from Miss Angeles. Buti nakahabol ka pa, attorney. Bibigyan mo kami ng inputs dito, ha? Because we want a balanced hearing. But I want, DICT, sir, what are you doing?
Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat. I've been taking notes and I would like to address some of the concerns. Although DICT, pag pinag-uusapan natin ng technology, hindi lang naman ng technology ang ating ginagawa, because as far as we're concerned, the policy is to ensure that ICT is being utilized for nation building. Now, tungkol ho dito sa fake news, the issue actually is whether or not a legislation is required to for purposes of stopping the spread of fake news. Bago ko po sagutin yon, una-una, tama po yung sinasabi ni Madam Chair na ang meron lamang batas ay yung Revised Penal Code Article 154 against false news. Pero meron ding mga kaakibat na batas which under the meron diyang Republic Act 6713, Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees. You have Article 19, 20, and 21 of the New Civil Code with respect to the duty to act with honesty and good faith and making the offender responsible for damages. And we also have Article 355 of the Revised Penal Code on libel, so on and so forth. Now, second, Madam Chair, on the matter of defining fake news, definitely, as far as the department is concerned, wala pa hong nakitang definition dyan. But more or less, based on consultations which were conducted, pwede ho nating i-define yan as a deliberate and willful posting, distribution, and sharing of an untruthful statement or false or malicious information through electronic communication such as but not limited to social media email, e-groups, among others. On the matter of the concern raised by Mr. Cruz tungkol sa mga government officials and employees, the good news is that as early as last year, we in government, the ICT with PCOO, Civil Service Commission, the SWD, and the CES Board, Career Executive Service Board, have already met several times, and we came up with a draft administrative order, and this draft, sinirculate ho namin yan, and it was published in our website, and pumunta kami sa iba't ibang lugar sa buong bansa. And we conducted consultations with the government officials, government employees, or rather, yes, government officers. And so far, we are almost done with our work. And ang mangyayari po dito is this. Government will only have one official social media account. But they can also come up with a social media account, say on a specific department or program, but all of this will have to be approved by the head of agency. There will be a social media team which will manage the social media account. Ngayon, anong mangyayari doon sa mga existing social media account na mga iba't ibang government officials or employees? They are not official, they are unauthorized, and therefore, if ever they are using it for purposes of disseminating information regarding government projects or even opinion, they have to delete that. Okay. Meron kaming rules na ginawa doon on how that could be made possible. Next, yung contents, nung mga social media accounts ng gobyerno, dapat official siya. They could contain yung mga publications and then materials. Merong mga blacklisted, sabihin nating actions or hindi pwede, like blackmailing, insulting contents, pornographic materials, malicious contents, mga untruthful statements, so on and so forth. Medyo marami po yan. And that, in other words, what we're trying to do here is to make the civil servants responsible enough to handle social media or how to, for them to engage in social media. And they can also maintain personal accounts. Wala akong problema ron. But it has to be very responsive yung kanyang account na yan. And if ever it will be used in his or her personal capacity, that is his or her own lookout. She should remember.
Wait, sir. Okay. So of course we can have our own blog, no, our own site, but our own lookout. Please expound on it. Diba? As government officials, we can have our own, but you said it is our own lookout. Please expound on that.
Okay. As far as the civil servant is concerned, Madam Chair, meaning to say, you have several laws in place which could be utilized if in case there are violations, he or she can be held liable. Like yung 6713 nga po, we have the Privacy Act, we have the Intellectual Property Law, and then Revised Penal Code, the New Civil Code. Sunod-sunod na po yun.
So sa revised penal code, meron na talaga dyan na nakasaad na disinformation, di ba po? At saka misinformation, fake news.
Yung
Basically, false
154,
news.
Madam Chair.
Di ba po? Meron na, di ba?
Yes, Madam Chair, meron na po yun. And in fact, the President has signed an amendment to it with respect to the penalties dito sa 154 that was last year.
The President signed on to it?
President Duterte, Your Honor.
Oh, what
that
did
was 2017.
Ano yung sinign on niya? Ano yung penalty, sir? So even the President supports
That's Republic Act 10951, signed on August 29, 2017, amending Article 154, Section 18 of the Revised Penal Code. Meron pong imprisonment of 6 months and then increasing the penalty to 200,000 pesos.
So the President recently updated this. He signed on to it, an amendment.
Yes. Ito na po yung ano.
So yung 1095 po is just increasing penalty. Yun po yung amendment sa Revised Penal Code 194. You were saying that the President has the President has amended.
No, Your Honor. There was a Republic Act 10951.
Okay.
And this was passed August 29, 2017.
Okay, 10951 states that.
Yes, 10951, amending Article 154, Section 18.
What particular provision was amended, sir?
Ayan. Ito. Ito na yan. Yeah, increasing the penalty to arresto mayor and a fine ranging from 40,000 to 100,000.
So lahat, basically, yan yung omnibus penalties ng RPC. So lahat yan, kasama yung 194, no? 154. Okay, yeah, I think that's Senator Drilon's amendment. Okay, so sir, I think I would like to give you, I appreciate the time, but I think I want to ask Eagle Broadcasting your thoughts on the matter, please, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am, and thank you for inviting us in this hearing. For Eagle Broadcasting Corporation, just like any other network, we have in place our fact-checking system, and we have our correspondents that are checking the perspectives on the ground, and we just like other network, we also counter-check with the people involved if the information was out. And we are actually, personally, I was a journalist. I'm not comfortable with the term fake news, because fake and news cannot be put together, because
I think this was the opinion of Ms. Tordesillas. It's kind of an irony, diba?
Yes.
Contradictory.
It's
Yeah, I know, but
clearly
it's just a term.
disinformation.
It's just a popular term. I see your concern. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And with the use of the social media right now, we are concerned that there are some institutions using the social media to influence people, because that is one of the objectives of social media. And in the coming, actually, there are instances that some institutions, personalities manipulate the information. So with the disinformation and the maneuvering of information is actually, for us, for me, it's actually disabling the informed choice of the people. So right now, we are really very careful with the information we are sharing with the people, the public. And we are all adhering for responsible journalism.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, when you were mentioning about your hesitance to define what fake news is, I agree. I mean, you would really have your reservations because it can backfire. But I think that Ms. Soriano has made a point here that what fake news is really with the intent or the malice to deceive. Correct? I mean, it could be if it was just an innocent mistake. I mean, iba yun. Pero kung talagang intention mo yung mangloko, yun talaga yun. Hindi na yun news. Ay, yung inventong storya na yun.
Yes.
So, because actually we're supposed to adjourn already soon, but I want to hear Attorney Trixie. Kasi attorney, ganito yan. Ito yung napag-diskusyon na namin ng wala ka eh. papakatotoo tayo. Okay. Unang-una, ang sinasabi sa diskusyon natin, dapat may kalayaan ng lahat na maghayag, di ba? Pero kayo rin ay abogado at saka bilang isang babae rin, minsan, nagiging bastos rin yung iba. Kunyari, rapin kita, ganun-ganon. Hindi din naman maganda yan sa ating lipunan. Pangalawa, nung pumunta kasi dito yung, nagsalita rin si Secretary Roque, yung kanyang concern na masyado tayong magre-regulate, lalo-lalo na mayroong diskriminasyon para dun sa mga miyembro ng gobyerno, kung masihigpitan natin ang standard sa kanila. Pero, ako naman, pangangatuyuan ko to, lalo na ako yung nasa gobyerno, mas mahirapan ako dito, mas mataas ang standard dapat sa amin. Okay? Kami nga yung nagre-report ng salin, yung Chief Justice natin, pwedeng matanggal dahil dun sa salin na yan. Kayo pa pag individual na pribado, kailangan ninyo mag-submit ng salin? Hindi naman. So, yun yung mga concerns natin. So, Attorney Trixie, kayo, matagal na kayo nakikipaglaban para sa karapatan ng kababaihan, para sa karapatan ng malayang pamamahayag. Ano ang inyong opinion pagdating dito sa kalayaan natin na magsalita? Anong hangganan nito, Attorney?
As you said, the rule is freedom of speech. The restrictions must be set either by the Constitution or laws that adhere to the Constitution. Meron tayo, dahil nagbabago ang mga media platforms natin, bumibilis yung information, bumibilis yung ability natin to manipulate that information, and there's increasing anonymity. Ngayon, meron tayong mga batas, may 154, may libel, etc. Pero the problem now is bridging the gap between the law enforcement and the crime itself. For example, if somebody libels me on Facebook and I want to file a case against him or her, I can't because I don't have an address. Or it's a fake account. Or it's somebody even if it's somebody I don't know, I cannot locate them. Or they're located in a different jurisdiction. So I have no recourse. Sometimes, depending on the standards that are set by, let's say, Facebook, I will not even be able to take down that speech. Okay, so the primary concern, I think, on both parties, whether it's the pro or administration or the anti-administration, the question is, what do we do when somebody does us wrong? And that wrong, it constitutes particular speech. So, for public officers, accountability is easy because of the code of ethics and the fact that they can be located. All you have to do is file your case, give the addresses their office, it gets served. No problem. In fact, I think that public officers are the least of our concerns because we can bridge the gap very easily. The problem is the rest of the public. I understand Mr. Cruz's concern about hate speech, but that's another thing. There's no definition of hate speech anywhere in our law, so they might want to look at that. Hate speech is defined under common usage as an aggressive speech directed at a particular aggregation of people, whether they're defined by race, religion, or nationality. Here, originally, I was thinking that baka naman wala namang kasing hate speech dito. Meron aggressive speech, threatening speech, libelous speech, etc. But with the evolution of the Dutertards and the Yellows, suddenly, it's possible that we actually do have hate speech now. Yellow tards. Yes, actually. So the polarization of communications on social media platforms have led to this sort of thing. So I think that in the end, because the internet is still considered such a wild west, they're very, even if we have rules, the ability to be able to enforce those rules still is determined largely by the platform, by the people who make that platform possible. In this case, it would be Facebook or Twitter or whatever else it is. So I think that the target for legislation here is to be able to make sure that as much as the laws we make are good and have really good intentions, how do we enforce them? Considering that, for instance, Facebook doesn't ask for us for addresses. Diba? If somebody libels me, somebody threatens to kill me, how do I go? The NBI has to have recourse to be able to locate that. But in order to do that, they may have to contend with the Data Privacy Act. So now what do you do? But there's no way you can do that. And then if in cases like Like I have to mention this, Thinking Pinoy, just gathering information that is readily available on the net, and suddenly he's liable for a violation of the Data Privacy Act. Diba? The enforcement of these particular laws has suddenly entered into vagueness. What we're saying here is that this is new. This is a new area. We don't know what we're doing for most of the part when it comes to enforcement of the
No,
laws.
but I agree with you, attorney. Parang hate speech is not really defined.
It's not. We need to have a law.
Oh,
defining
aggressive
hate
speech. I mean,
Yes.
kunyari, a grave threat, di ba?
Yes.
May mga ganyan. I mean, kayo abogado, ako hindi. Pero, matanong lang kita. Kasi sinasabi nga ni Tonyo, di ba sinabi mo, you sympathize with him, you agree. Kasi nga, sa ibang platform, halimbawa, hindi nilalabas yung, kunyari, re-rapin kita, papatayin kita, ganyan. Ikaw ba sa tingin mo, dun sa mga comments na yon, kung may kapabilidad naman, dapat tanggalin yon?
Of course. But it will also depend on the standards set by the provider, by the platform. So, again, Facebook has community standards. If they violate the community standards, you can report it, but the discretion is theirs to take down or not. So, that discretion is not even determined by what our laws are. But it can
Kasi
be
kayo, attorney,
anything.
pagka pinapanood ko yung blog ninyo, no? It's very objective. I mean, well, of course, you have your own leanings. I mean, that's why it's a blog. You have your own personal leanings. But you don't use defamatory, di ba? I mean, as much as possible, you try to stick to the issues. Okay. Would you suggest, for example, that especially a government platform, if they have the capability, they should take out those that are a little bit, threatening already, and di ba? Parang,
Of course, and I think that can be done with technology. There are certain keywords that you can watch out for, so you don't need people to actually monitor your comment sections. So yes, I think that this can be done.
naging attorney ka tuloy, Sec.
Sec Martin already
Sec
has
Martin
one,
at
kasi he's really good
attorney
at it.
Marie, attorney Banag, tanggalin na ninyo yan. Kasi alam mo, syempre, di ba, pag sinasabi rape, mamatay na yung pamilya mo, mga ganon. There's no room for that in our society. I think we have to encourage like a higher level of debate. Di ba, parang, yung katamaran na yun or pagiging, actually, kabastusan na yun. So, ako naman kasi, sabihin nyo lahat how frustrated you are. Like, ikaw, palpak ka sa trabaho mo, ganito, ganyan, okay? In fact, ako nga, something that you cannot do anything about your physical well-being, dapat hindi din kasama yan. But okay, sabihin na natin, okay, wala, parang ayoko yung itsura mo, ganyan, okay, fine na yun. Pero yung talagang threatening, pati dun sa mga anak mo or dun sa pamilya, parang wala na yun. Okay, Miss Varona.
Very briefly lang po. While I will hold Facebook accountable, example, if I report something that it doesn't act on and it's clearly a threat, I wouldn't push on Facebook the entire responsibility of overseeing our pages. I mean, all the news organizations have pages that where the comments are regulated, not because we hate freedom of speech, but because we recognize that people cannot just be allowed to threaten other people. And it's not like they have 200 people watching over their Facebook accounts. Secretary Andanar po, Senator Grace, they have very few, pinakamarami na po na mga 15 personnel ang mga citizen journalist outfits ng iba't ibang company, but yet they managed to do that. And I think it's really the responsibility of the government agencies that owns the Facebook account or whatever account there is to monitor it. And let's not talk of mechanical algorithms. It's really the worldview of the people who own that page. Do you think threats are okay in this society? Or do you think that threats are a crime and should never be allowed in government estate?
No, thank you, ma'am. I think that, no, that's right. Okay, Facebook, I'm sure you have the capability, and we're not putting all the blame in you. In fact, we appreciate, we have our own pages, okay, obviously, so there are people who are taking advantage. But we have to be able to monitor our sites also. Secretary Andanar,
Yes, ma'am.
sir.
Yes, Madam Chair. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, I am against hate speech or any aggressive speech that hurt people. Number two, I am also totally against censorship. Ayoko kong maakusahan as the Secretary of the PCOO na kapag inaalis natin ay sinesensor ko, because that happened before already, as I mentioned earlier. Number three, kung meron pong magrereklamo, kung meron pong makapag-screenshot at ipadala sa opisina ho namin, tanggapan namin, then we will remove. So far, wala pa akong nagko-complain.
Ay nako, alam mo, Attorney Banag, ikaw na ang mag-monitor dun sa mga ganyan.
and then ma'am, number four, itong mga hate speech, itong mga slanderous na comments, this could also serve as proof kapag kinasuhan mo yung taong nagsulat. So, siguro, Attorney Trixie, yeah, we can discuss this in our office. Thank you.
But you know what, Attorney Trixie, I really appreciate those blogs, I mean, of information. I don't agree with you all the time, but when you stick to the issues, and then you encourage people to contribute, but on a level that is respectable. Kasi parang sa akin, kung ganyan na lang, bastusan na lang ba tayo? Ba't pa tayo nagkaroon ng lipunan, di ba? Parang, I am not for, hindi ako nagmamalinis, but I hope that, okay, I'll ask you this. Because you're kind of in between. Okay. This is not in my committee, but I believe that government officials to be held at, should be held at a higher standard. Okay. Secretary Roque, and I respect where he's coming from. He's saying that, hindi, that's discrimination, okay? Although this is from a different committee, discrimination. So why will you give government officials more of a penalty for violating the same crime? Because it's already in our revised penal code 154, am I correct? Na parang false news, okay? Ako naman, ang sinasabi ko, dito, government employees, and I belong to that, we should be held at a higher standard, kaya there should be administrative responsibilities rin. Ibig sabihin, pag meron kang violation, hindi lamang criminal, which can take years, pwede ka muna isuspend sa trabaho mo. Okay. Sinasabi niya, hindi, that's prejudice. Ngayon lang niya sinasabi yon. Because I believe, kami nga sa gobyerno, we have to submit our SALN, you have to submit your SALN, we have to be able to answer to a plunder case or a graft case, and the private individual is not subject to the same unless they connive with a government official. Your take on that, ma'am?
Like Secretary Andanar, I believe that the freedom of speech is the rule. And in all cases, that prior restraint is wrong. So now it becomes a question of how you are going to judge particular speech if it is uttered by a public officer. If that, there are code of ethics, as we all know, but the question of standards is something that we should be more specific in, because you're going to be holding a person accountable, and the possibility of losing their jobs is always real. So that is where we stand now. My problem is that the standards are very quickly changing because of social media. The explosion in social media from 2015 to the present time has been, geometric. So pegging a particular standard at this point when everything is in flux might be difficult. For example, there was a time when there was no social media, so it was easy to judge the demeanor and behavior of a public officer, and where their demeanor and behavior becomes accountable to their, but becomes creditable to their position. For example, judges, justices, even socializations are subject to close scrutiny. But if you are, let's say, a clerk, rank and file in government, how much leeway are you going to give that person? Now with social media, there is the freedom of expression, there is the prohibition against prior restraint, and just how much can you say on a personal account in your own personal time when you're talking about a government employee or officer whose demeanor or behavior is not subject to the same kind of scrutiny as a judge or justice. So now the problem is standards. So it's difficult to make a law when you have different standards for different kinds of public officials.
No, no, no. I'm with you there. I mean, we don't want to overregulate, diba? That's what we're saying. But I think that there are certain things that are obvious. For example, there are gray areas, for sure. But let's say a government official is irresponsible enough to say na aapaw ang dam, na alam mo naman talagang hindi. Diba? Nanakot lang. Yun talaga, for sure, accountable. Ayoko magbanggit ng pangalan kasi sabihin nila sinisingle out. Pero, kunyari, opinion nung mga dapat din nag-iingat na may konting paggalang. But I know what you're saying. You didn't really answer definitively. Should we be held liable in that? Because nga, you cannot really define that standard. Okay. But I don't think it will be. I don't think that we're worse off if we have government officials that are more cautious. I mean, that's just my take. And I feel that I can speak with authority on this precisely because I will be affected by it. I'm part of it. Okay. When I speak and I criticize not just any particular party, but my colleague, as long as it's factual and it's not malicious, it's not something that I invent, like let's say my seatmate, Senator Lacson, did this and this, which is not naman true. Yun talaga for sure. But if it's something based on a legitimate criticism of something that occurred, I don't think that, I think that's pretty clear that that's an opinion. Anyway, attorney, ako pa. Ano na pinalusot ko sa MTRCB na minsan nga nagsisisi rin ako. But my point is, of course, we would rather have the freedom to express. But sometimes, as an individual, as a Filipino, I don't think that we're worse off maintaining a certain level of standard and respect also. Diba? Parang, kayo nga dyan sa, madali kayo kasi media entity kayo Pwede kayong paalisin sa trabaho nyo anytime if you violate, if you print something that is naturally false. But if you're your own boss, it will be more difficult. But I think for the government, I know Secretary Martin and Secretary Banag, they're trying to maintain a certain standard. There are others that are a little bit stubborn. I know the challenge, but let's just, I think that we have the capability naman to see kung talagang grave threat na yan. Diba? Kahit naman si Attorney Trixie, alam naman niya, abogado siya diba? Medyo may pambabastos na yan. Babae rin yan, kahit paano lalabas rin yan. But, I myself, I don't want to over-legislate. And Facebook and Google, we appreciate your presence in our country to be able to bridge the gaps among friends, long-lost lovers, I don't know. But, but my point is also give us a little bit of importance. I think that it's not too much to ask. I'm not for overtaxing anybody. I want free competition in this country. I want more investors for our country, but I also want our country to get what we believe is due us. Okay, so right now it's not your fault. This is how it is. But send a representative that we can easily communicate with. Okay, before I wrap up, any more comments? Sir, I haven't heard from you. Mr. Hernandez? No, what's your name?
Clavite, Harold Clavite.
I can't
So,
see your
Philippine
name.
Information Agency po.
Okay, very quickly, sir, what do you have to add?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add context on the discussions, I'd like to emphasize also that since we're talking about responsibility and accountability here, I'd like to point out that I very much agree with the other resource persons that this is not just the sole responsibility of one entity. We cannot put the blame to Facebook. We cannot put on the blame to government as well. But in the whole scheme of things, this is everyone's responsibility and accountability. And I'd like to commend this committee for giving such a forum for us to have the opportunity to talk about this, because for me it's very important that we talk about this because this is a very important and real issue. Now, on the part of the government, I'd like to assure you that policies have been trying to put into order these things as far as government offices are concerned. As reported earlier by DICT and PCOO, the draft administrative order on social media use in government is on its final stages, and soon we will have those guidelines. And I think this will help offices, government officials in the conduct of and use of social media.
Are you working with PCOO?
Yes, madam.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let me ask KBP. Sir, you have any manifestations?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for inviting KBP again. On fake news in broadcast and television, if there is any outfit that has benefited out of fake news, it's probably the broadcast industry and traditional media, because then we have become more relevant. Kami ang pinupuntahan kung meron balita na alanganin, kami ang tinatanong kung tama o hindi. So, naging mas relevant ang traditional media sa paglaganap ng quote-unquote fake news. Of course, we follow the same traditions and principles of verification as pointed out a while ago. That is inherent in the practice of responsible journalism. That is not to say that we do not absolutely, that is not to say, however, that we do not give unverified information sometimes. Even our ethical practices allow the broadcast of unverified information if, under certain circumstances, the withholding of the same might cause more harm. Ang example nyo kanina po, pumuputok yung dam. Pwede pong naka-receive kami ng information na umaapaw na ang dam at napaka-importanteng ipaalam sa downstream. Pero hindi pa namin ma-verify. We can give the information but label it as unverified information. And there are guidelines that we should follow, like verifying it ASAP and correcting it as soon as possible. So meron po instances na gumagamit o nabibigay ang unverified information. But the rule is still at least 2 verified, credible verifications rather. Sa punto ng protected speech, ang KBP ang isang institusyon na talagang pinapaglaban namin ang freedom of expression. Pero siguro, importante rin na i-distinguish na meron certain levels of protected speech. Political speech is the highest of all protected speech. At talagang unconstitutional kung lalabas tayo ng batas na i-restrain ito. Pero meron ibang klaseng speech. Hate speech is one. Commercial speech is one. Merong qualifications in legislating against them or controlling them. So pwede po 'yon, huwag lang yung political speech. At the parameters, the guidelines, the distinction should be very clear. As to yung punto po ng government officials being subject to certain rules, tama po yung equal protection. Pero the term itself defines it, equal protection. Under equal circumstances are the class distinguished. And there is a distinction between a private individual and a government official. That's found in the Constitution. It says government officials or the government is a public trust. Magkaiba yun. Ang private individual, hindi ganun ang one. So, equal protection refers to all things being equal. So, hindi necessary na hindi pwedeng i-regulate. Although one compromise is what was pointed out kanina, na the government agencies should be mandated to have a very clear social media policy. And that should be part of their transparency and public charter. Na dapat alam ng mga kababaan ng madla na meron social media policy at ito yung mga rules ng social media policy. That would not be infringing upon the right of public officials. So, yun po ang input namin, Madam Chair. Maraming salamat po.
Magaling talaga kayo, Attorney Uralpan. Matagal ko ng informal advisor ito eh. Matagal na talagang, hindi lang ako marami na sa atin na talagang napailalim dyan sa KBP, na meron silang ethical standards. And then I would like to wrap up this hearing. The chair noted that SB 1680 is referred to the Committee on Civil Service and that a higher accountability is demanded from government officials and employees consistent with the action that the public office is a public trust, as you mentioned. It's a choice for us. We want to run for public office, we give up certain privileges. We are appointed, we give up certain things. The chair shared the sentiment the communications and free expression should not be hindered. On the other hand, number 2, Facebook said that they care about the issue at hand, alarmed on fake news. Facebook admitted that fake news issue is more nuanced and more difficult than terrorism. And I agree, because it's not very clear sometimes. That Facebook is committed to build an informed community in 4 approaches, stopping bad actors in using Facebook. We've seen that in other countries. Disrupting economic incentives, news feed ranking, and empowering communities and partners. Number 4, Facebook is committed to promote public education, addressing bullying, respect for privacy, and others. Facebook has been working in partnership with various media or student organizations and schools and universities. You've mentioned that you work also with the DICT. Google said that contents are important to them and that they work with various news stations and work with journalists with Cebu Sunstar as the last. Google follows an algorithm for one issue personality to get to the top for hits or visits. Facebook said that they have been working with the government, like the DICT mainly, 7 from the mainstream media, CNN and ABS-CBN, even GMA, a suggestion, although not a definition, that fake news is not validated from source. Fake news is not validated from one source and are not checked and rechecked. Journalists are cautious of using information of unknown origin and cannot be verified. From blogger Miss Inday Barona, young people are thirsty for knowledge. A higher accountability is expected from public officials. There's a need to vet information. PCOO at this time said that they have no definition yet, or they're cautious about defining fake news. A discussion on page verification in Facebook, takedown policy, hate speech ensued. Facebook said that there are efforts to review posts and procedure. From Academe, Dr. Soriano DLSU, she said that, I think this is the most important, intents and motives should be determined, should be considered in the determination of fake news. So ano ba talagang intensyon sa paglabas ng balita? Ito ba'y para mangloko? Ito ba'y para manlinlang? Yun naman talagang basihan dahil pwede tayo lahat magkamali. Pero pag may mali siya at meron talagang intensyon na mangloko, yun talaga malinaw kung ano yung hindi makatotohanan. Salamat. Facebook committed that all information in the hearing should be utilized by them to correct practices, post-monitoring, and others. And I thank you again for your presence here today. Maybe so that you won't have to travel back and forth. And I know that Ms. DB, you have very young children. Maybe you can post somebody here and just come here every now and then to enjoy our beaches instead, as opposed to shuttling back and forth just to answer questions. I mean, the Philippines is much more than the Senate. There's a lot to offer the country that is beautiful, and you don't have to be here on an official basis all the time. Okay, Facebook in reply said that they have the capacity to determine such, I guess, click farms that Mr. Nokum mentioned. The committee will appreciate receiving reports on the matter for future and committee use. The chair requested that Facebook be represented in government fora where they are requested. To have an office of Facebook in the Philippines where you already have, but we just want a policy representative whom you will listen to and not just for display. Okay? To address the concerns of Secretary Andanar and the Marawi story in Facebook, to help in addressing terrorism issue, FB committed to have a Facebook office in Manila. Well, we already have one. There are 30,000 fake news in France have been purged last year. Facebook said that they will do the same in the Philippines and will report on the matter. Facebook said that they have tools to foster transparency in the issue of political campaign spending. The National Bureau of Investigation sought the assistance of Facebook on the issue of libel and cyber libel concerns. Impormasyon, tamang impormasyon ang dapat na matutunan ng ating mga mamayan. Hindi news na minamanipula ng iilan para lamang masilbihan ang sarili nilang kapakanan. Alam ko marami sa atin sa gobyerno may tapat na hangarin na maglingkod. Pasensya na kung ako'y nagiging makata. Pero ang totoo po nito ay siguro naman ang ating mga kababayan ay hindi tayo pagbibigyan ng malaking responsibilidad kung hindi rin malaki ang ekspektasyon nila sa atin. Hindi naman siguro masama na sabihin na mas maging stricto tayo sa ating sarili. Na nasa batas na nakalaan. Na meron na talagang parusa sa mga nanlilinlang. Ano ba naman ang sabihin natin na sa mismong rangko natin sa gobyerno, tayo mismo ay maging responsable sa ating sarili at managot para sa ating sarili. Huwag natin ibahin ang ating prinsipyo dahil lamang tayo ay nabigyan ng ibang katungkulan. Sapagkat sa bandang huli, ang titingin rin sa ating muka, sa ating sarili, ay yung mga nagawa natin na nakalipas na hindi nating inayos ang ating trabaho. The core principles of journalism, which is so easily Googled, is truth and accuracy, independence, fairness and impartiality, humanity, and accountability. I think those are truths or those are principles that we can all use, whether in the private or in the public sector. And again, I'd like to thank Secretary Andanar for your presence here today. Sir, hindi naman masyadong madugo, di ba? Attorney Banag, also, thank you for being open to our office. When we have questions, we can easily approach you. Also, being a woman, I'm sure that helps. The representative from the KBP, sir, for always supporting our hearings. From the mainstream media, thank you also for sharing with us your guiding principles to be accountable to the public. Our bloggers na medyo matapang pa rin magpakita dito. Attorney Trixie, thank you. Globe Smart, NBI, members of the Philippine Information Agency, at marami pang iba sa inyo. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo ngayong araw. Kung meron po kayong nais pang idagdag sa ating pag-uusap ngayon para masama sa ating deliberasyon, please submit your position papers. Again, Facebook and Google, thank you for your presence here today. Please enjoy the Philippines. I hope you have more time for that. And please promote the Philippines in Facebook and Google because there's a lot in our country that other citizens of the world can actually appreciate and enjoy. So with that, this meeting on the Committee on Public Information and Mass Media is therefore adjourned. Thank you.